Oh my god, dude. What the hell? Stream ended. I can't believe this. I can't believe this. Yeah. Well, maybe we're back. I don't freaking know, man. It's really frustrating. I had better internet when I was the previous place I was living. Um, because I was closer to the Wi-Fi router. That's it, really. It I need to figure out something here. You know, there is actually an Ethernet port on the repeater I have. Maybe I could use that. Anyway, okay. Well, I'll have to figure that out, but we'll just try and go from here. Okay.
The top number
Continuing
indicates
on.
how many beats we have per measure.
How many beats are in each bar of the music?
How many beats are...
Well, oh, it's gonna be two separate videos now. Oh my god. It's so dumb that YouTube would end the stream, like, cause I didn't press end stream on YouTube. Even if the stream, like, even if I stop, like, giving YouTube data, it shouldn't end the stream, especially not within a margin of, like, a minute, like it did. Cause, like, I don't know, YouTube should know that people's internet can cut out for a minute.
in a given measure?
How many beats are in the measure?
And that the
So-
bottom number.
Anyway, what I was saying, I think, was that there were several people who were, like, teachers who commented on this, and let's see, oh man, can I... Huh, I haven't even read a lot of these. Yeah, okay. But anyway, well, I've been seeing that, like, a lot of music teachers have actually commented and been like, yeah, I do teach counts, and like the beats terminology is not great. And so that's been interesting. Three streams per measure. Oh my goodness. Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
Is the kind of note that gets a beat.
So the bottom number is telling you what type of beat.
This is going to tell us exactly what we're counting.
And the number corresponds to what kind of note is considered a beat.
There are some variations.
I was initially going to have even more clips from even more YouTubers, because there's so many clips that you can find of people with, it's like, saying those exact words. But I ended up just going with like 3 or 4 rather notable ones.
On it, you might hear someone talk about the top number being the number of counts, which I vastly prefer. And you might hear the...
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really gotten into much of the breakdown yet, so we'll see. I'll probably end up circling back to everything I talked about earlier as well in this attempt.
Bottom number
guess.
being the value of a beat. And a lot of the times, this is kind of where the explanation ends. It's how many of what.
If we just apply that how many of what thing, we can literally figure out any time signature ever.
Okay, so let's look at.
Yeah, and that verbiage from Charles Cornell, Charles Cornell's great. I think what he does is awesome, and he's like a super valuable person to have in the music theory ecosystem, because he's just very enthusiastic about stuff, and that's cool. But that phrasing was very odd to me. I was like, what do you mean we can figure out any time signature? I still don't really know what he meant by that, because when you're just reading a piece of music, like knowing that a time signature is like the number of a certain value of note in a measure, like that's not the mystery part of it, right? Like that part you don't need the time signature for, because you can just look at how many notes there are between a bar line, right? Which is what I now demonstrate. So like, what does it mean that you can figure out a time signature by saying that it's that number of counts? I guess literally he just means you can figure out what the time signature means. And it's just that simple, which I guess that is true. Like that is what time signatures strictly mean. So I guess that's the case. Well, welcome anyway, Ropal. Ropal.
Some sheet
Sounds
music.
familiar.
Here we have a little bit of music in 4/4. We know how to read.
I wonder how many people actually caught that this is, like, I put like, 5% opacity Crazy Frog, but I feel like that was missable actually.
But what if we take it away? Can you figure?
Yeah, and so this is the point, right? And you actually see this like fairly often, where you see like scores that just don't have a time signature on them because they're in 4/4, and it's just assumed.
Figure it out now? Yeah, of course. You can still look at the measures and count up how many eighth notes and eighth rests and 16th notes. Like, you can still figure it out. Time signatures are redundant. So, what's the point? Well, there are actually many, starting with the fact that redundancy isn't a bad thing necessarily. Take this piece of sheet music, a little bit more complex. Do you notice anything here?
And this, I didn't mention it, but this sheet music, this is, that was not exactly it, but this is Tell Me No, actually. This is a piano part from Tell Me No, which does play in the background later in the video, and I thought about like highlighting it because I do have several of my own songs in this video. I only talk explicitly about Does She Know and Natalie's Never Tasted Anything Other Than Mustard, though. And, right? I don't talk about any of the others explicitly. No, I don't think so. Yeah. But Tell Me No does show up in the background later, and it also shows up in notation here. And then I also have Wabi in play for like the main title card.
You'd be forgiven for not realizing that this measure is 7/8. That's why we have time signatures, right? There are these.
Yeah, making the time signatures disappear was a Photoshop endeavor there. It's kind of annoying, but we made it work.
Huge, big, bold markings that tell you ahead of time, what the spacing is going to be, how many beats there are, and you could
Here's
very
Wabin.
easily trip up reading the music if you didn't have those measures labeled. So they're effectively just performance notes.
And all of that was true, right? I guess, yeah, like for the drama of it, like this pacing made sense, but like all of that is true. Like, this part is the thing that's not true, is like they're just performance notes, right? Like they're not just performance notes, they're not redundant.
Notes, but they're useful, is what I would say.
Yeah, like they are useful, but they are more than performance notes. That's the thing that I'm saying, like if things were not the way they are.
If things were just not the way that they are.
And then we have an abbreviated version of that drop.
I will stop teasing. Here are the lies. We will.
Yeah, originally I was going to here. Let me show you in the script actually. So, here's the script, or the main document. Yeah, this is a good time to show it, I suppose. This document is, 19 pages long. I believe it has about 8,000 words. Yep, 8,092 words. And I ended up organizing it kind of in this way of like, I wanted to make sure that I was like staying aligned to a particular small set of goals so that the video would like do something specific, wouldn't get too off the rails. And then this ideation section is like the first stuff that I was writing. This stuff was just all kind of like, I don't know, me dumping stuff to talk about. Usually like the process for my videos is at first it's like a lot of sessions of me just like pacing around my room talking to myself about an idea, and then I'll think about things, and then I'll start researching about it and finding examples for what I want to talk about or whatever, right? And then I'll kind of dump ideas and links and stuff into a Google Doc. Now the ideation section here isn't actually everything that I was originally dumping for ideation, because a lot of that I just ended up moving into the script. But yeah, the North Stars for this video were these kind of main 4 points. Explaining why time signatures are confusing. I think that's like one of the 2 biggest points. And then like the other big point is presenting the log-base-2 rule. And then the 2 less important but still like things I wanted to do was exploring the history, where they come from, and exploring where they're going, right? So mostly I want to talk about the present, why they're confusing in the present, and then like what's going on like with the big time signatures in the present. And I maybe should have made this, I definitely did say this in the video, but maybe I should have made it even more clear that like the log-base-2 rule is primarily targeted towards non-canonized time signatures. So like the log-base-2 rule is not really for 6/8 or 4/4 or cut time, or these time signatures that are very common and have a history to them, have like momentum culturally. It's really geared towards the bigger time signatures, where they become less like a like really specific meter and more like a family of meters. But like, what is that family of meters exactly? That's what the log-base-2 rule tells you. But then also, honestly, even more importantly, arguably, the log-base-2 rule, and this is one of my big regrets from the video, honestly, is that I presented the log-base-2 rule going from time signature to metric tree, but really, it should be the other way around. Like it can go both ways, but it's a many-to-one relationship between like metric trees and time signatures, right? Because you can have 1516 and it can be in a bunch of different groupings. And so if you have a specific metric tree and you're like, this is the way I'm hearing it, what should I call that as a time signature? That's what the log-base-2 rule will tell you, right? But the log-base-2 rule does not tell you how to feel the song, and it doesn't tell you exactly what metric tree something is based on the time signature. But if you work on vocabulary in a particular time signature, that can mean that you're working on those different feels that might add up to that time signature. So if I'm working on 1516 vocabulary, then maybe I'm working on stuff that's 3/5s, but I'm also working on stuff that's 4/5/6, and I'm also working on stuff that's 7/4/4. Or is 7/4/4 correct there? Yeah, 7/4/4. So it's like there's like a family of meters that are 1516, but they're not all the same. Whereas 3/4 as a specific meter is really just one particular thing. However, of course, then you can talk about like, well, what if you're swinging it? What if you're subdividing it in triplets, but you're just writing it in 3/4 and writing a bunch of tuplets? What if it's 3/4, but it's really felt as 1 beat per bar because it's fast 3/4? Like there are all these, kind of exceptions, but that's that's okay. Log-base-2 rule is not really meant for 3/4. It's meant for 1516. It's meant for 2732. Like that's what log-base-2 rule is for, and also for over 8s. Just like for odd time over 8s, over 16s, over 32s. That's what it's for. Anyway, so yeah, this is one of the big points that I maybe wasn't clear enough about, is that the log-base-2 rule will take a metric tree. So by the way, actually, I could show you. So I coded up metric trees for this video, and I am going to probably eventually have a public version of this. So if you don't know, because some of you might be new here, if you don't know, I'm a programmer, And I've made several like music apps, and they're really freaking cool actually, if I do say so myself. So chambercode.com is my website, and there's music tools. And my first ever program was an earlier iteration of this, which is really fun. This one's very simple, but it's just like if you do like A, C sharp, E, and then you flip it around, I don't know, flip it around A, then you get this. So it's like flipping around this gives you, right? So you go like, you know, out a major third, out a minor third from A, and that gives you, right? But you could also flip it around B, and that means that A major triad flipped around B, is a G flat minor, right? Or F sharp minor, depending on how you want to think about it. But I also have made like Polyshaper, which is by far my most like notable and famous one, because I have like literally millions of views on Reels with this stuff. But this one's super fun. Anyway, the point is that I make software, and so I'm working on, and I will make a one of these. So this is Meter, and actually we can immediately change this because it's actually going to be called Meter, like this, like standing for metric trees. And I'm working on this at the moment, and I will probably release it at some point. But this is how I did it. And the way I represent them internally is with this like crazy nested list structure. So if you wanted to have like let's say we want to actually split this second to last subdivision into like 5, then we would go, I think, here. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. But obviously that's a pretty messed up rhythmic tree. But yeah, so then I have like some basic ones, like does she know is this one. So actually we can just copy that over and then put that here. And then this is does she know, and then you just press space and it plays it. And then there's a tempo I have set. This is all like, there's no UI for it right now. I'm doing everything in code because it's all prototyping, and I literally was coding this like Thursday night, like trying to get the edit done for the video. And so right now it's at 120 times 5. What was that for? Oh, I think that was for the big band piece that I clipped, the Sungazer Plus thing, because that was the last one I did because it's at the end of the video. Anyway, so that's gonna happen. But yeah, these are things. These are things. What is going on? Fun. No more FL Studio free virus. No more FL Studio free virus. Also, I am proud to say I never pirated FL. I bought it. I used the demo first, of course. And I bought it. I think it was like the most expensive thing I'd ever bought when I bought it, because I was like 15 or 16, I think, and did not have a ton of money. And so I was like, I saved up and I spent $300 on Signature FL Studio. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And I don't regret it. FL Studio there are things that are true about FL Studio, but I love it. Anyway, this was the script itself, a lot of different things. Oh yeah, some other like options for the hook. I'm really glad I went with the one I actually did. But yeah. Man. Script goes crazy. Okay. Let's continue. Lies. Cover the truths behind each of these as the video progresses. But, if you've been in music for a while, if you've been reading music for some number of years, you'll have gotten through this stuff and you're fine, right? And then we go back into quintuplet swing with weird chords, which is like my main background music that I use in videos. Are mostly helpful lies told to beginners. They're simplifications in a way. Yeah, sure, the top number actually is the number of beats in a measure when all you're reading is 4/4 and 3/4. But then something as simple as 6/8
already breaks that.
6/8 has 2 strong beats in a bar.
I really like how, like, as he says 6/8 has 2, the video like cuts to a different thing in rhythm with his voice. Like, let's watch that again. Okay, or not, because why would a video
But then something as
successfully
simple
play for
as
me?
6/8
Okay.
already breaks that.
6/8 has 2 strong beats in a bar.
I love
Not
it.
6, but 2.
So you already have to go, well, we lied to you a little bit. It's not exactly the number of...
Man, look at this incredible video quality. Yeah, I just can't bring myself, like, the thing is, like, audio matters way more to the, like, comfort of a viewer. And since I have good audio, I'm like, man, I don't need to buy a camera, especially with like the ethics of buying new electronics in the state of the world right now. Like, I'm very, very hesitant to do that, and I'm like, I just don't need to because I have a good mic already.
beats per measure, because 6/8's not like that. And it's like 6/8 is not some crazy obscure time signature. Like, there's tons of popular music and classical music in 6/8. Some people will say, there are 6 beats. There really are 6 beats in 6.
2 strong beats is very misleading. Is it? I'm curious what you mean by that, Song and Wind.
6/8. It's just that there's only 2 strong.
Like, I mean, I don't agree with it exactly, because I would just say there are 2 beats. The thing is, okay, let's talk about the word beats a little bit, right? So the word beats, the word beat has like a billion definitions overall. And then within music, it also has like a billion definitions. And one of the things that I don't like is when words have a lot of definitions that overlap with one another and make things confusing. And so, like, I am really not happy with the idea of just accepting that, like, beats can mean the pulse that you feel, but it can also mean something that is usually but not always the pulse that you feel when it comes to time signatures. Because the thing is not like, it's not like we have beats referring to some category and then beats also referring to a subcategory. It's like beats referring to one circle in a Venn diagram, and then also beats referring to another circle that mostly overlaps, but not quite. And it's like, that's not good. I care about words. I care about semantics a lot. And yes, I had some people comment like, this is semantic bullshit. I'm like, yeah, it is. I'm on my semantic bullshit. That is what this video is about. So anyway, I hate the idea of beats being overloaded like that, or like any word being overloaded like that. And so, yeah, but I mean, I have to admit that it is used like that. Like, people do use it like that, where they'll say like, oh yeah, there's this many beats, and they don't actually mean pulses when they say beats, but they're talking about the number on the top of a time signature, because that's what they were taught. They were taught that the number on the top of a time signature is the number of beats. So they're calling it beats instead of, like, you know, something more abstract like divisions. And I don't like that. Anyway. Okay, let me catch up. Game Boy camera webcam. Oh yeah, it is complete shit, but that's okay. And it's the same webcam that, you know, was in my face when we talked to Adam at the end of this. Because how would one be able to differentiate between 6/8 and 3/8? Yeah, I mean, the main way that you would do that, right, the idea would be that, like, in 6/8, it would still be like a strong, weak kind of pattern. But a lot of the times that just isn't sonically present in stuff that we call 6/8, in stuff that we would agree is 6/8. Like, a lot of times it's just not present. And that's the thing, is like, the classical notion of stress patterns in time signatures is really, like, not applicable to a lot of stuff. And actually, there's a whole nother video potentially about, like, why do we even bother talking about stuff being in 4 when so many of our patterns are actually symmetrical across the 4 beats, and, like, they're actually 2-beat cycles, like the classic rock beat, the standard rock beat, like, that is a 2-beat pattern. Like, it loops every 2 beats. We still call it 4. That's a whole topic, I think, and maybe there will be a video about that at some point. But Yeah, the idea would be that 6/8 has like a strong weak kind of pattern, but it's like tiers of strong and weak beats. And that is also, by the way, the explanation that would be given, I imagine, to my thing here where I'm like, okay, but then you also tell me that 4/4 is like strong, weak, weak, weak. So does 4/4 only have one beat? Well, the answer would be that there are like tiers of strong and weak beats. Like it doesn't mean quite the same thing to talk about like the strong beats of 6/8 versus the strong beats of 4/4. But that's like so confusing, right? So that's why I'm like, yeah, let's just not talk about beats and like the strong beats and stuff. Let's talk about it being 2 beats with triplet subdivision, and each beat is a dotted quarter note, which it sounds like a lot of music teachers actually do anyway, and that's great. I'm glad that happens. A lot of people, I got a lot of music teachers who commented that they do talk about it that way, and I'm like, yes, awesome. So let's see. The synths in the quintuplet swing background remind me of the synth tones of the band. This heat. Are there even synths in it? Wait, are there synths? Let me check this. There might be. I just totally forget. I know that there's a lot of vocals. And I wonder if maybe you're actually hearing the vocals because they are stacked in like some weird harmony. Yeah, probably the like weirdest, craziest chords I've ever used were in that song, to be honest. Up to this point, or maybe Moving Day. Moving Day had like the like super hyper ultra Lydian chord, but I don't know. I mean, honestly, that one's not as weird as some of the other ones in this one. Sorry, what am I doing right now? General resources. Where is it? Quintuplet beat with crash. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, I don't think there's any synths. It's just my voice and a bass and some drums. But it's like chopped up, so it kind of sounds synthy, right? Like this is like a septuplet chop of my voice. Right? Or, I don't know, that one might have been quintuplet. I know there's some septuplet in here somewhere. Oh, I think is that it? That's the septuplet. Yeah, that's fun, right? Wait, is this perfectly aligned with the tempo? Oh, okay, so the tempo is actually 65. So we're like playing, the metronome here is duplets over the quintuplets. Yeah, so then you can hear how this is 7, right? That's fun. Okay. Continuing on. Wrong beats.
Of course, we have 6 beats in the bar, but actually only 2 accented beats.
But from the same... 6/8... Okay, here's the thing, right? 6/8, there are like classical pieces of music written in 6/8 that are felt as like 6 actual pulses. And so, okay, let's talk about pulses actually real quick. This is a very important point that I really wish I put this in a pinned comment, but I really wish that I had actually mentioned this in the video. I kind of was like, oh, check out Adam Neely's like speed limits video because it's in there, but I really should have like put it in my video directly. Okay, so the pulse that I mean when I'm talking about where you feel the pulse, I'm talking about the rhythm to which you move your body with least effort. And this is a big reason why I say you can't have something like 2-2-1 or 2-2-2-1 for 7. Like try bobbing your head like that. Like 1-2 1-2 1-2 1-1-2 1-2 1-2 1-1-2 1-2 1-2 1-1. Like you would never naturally do that. You're gonna bob your head like 1-2 1-2 1-2 3 1-2 1-2 1-2 3 1-2 1-2 1-2 3. That's what I mean. Like that's what's going on when I say that like 2-2-2-1 is not really a valid pulse pattern. Now, maybe you do. That's the thing. It is very subjective. Yes, it can be very subjective, like how you move your body. Or like, I guess it's not subjective how you move your body, but like how you move your body can be very individual to you, and therefore the pulse can be very subjective. However, I don't know. It's hard for me to buy that you're gonna actually bob your head in a 2-2-2-1 pattern, and I don't mean that as like 1-2-1-2-1-2-1-1-2, like not like that, but like 1-2-1-2-1-2-1-1-2. Like, I don't know. That feels way more effortful than to just go 1-2-1-2-1-2-3, 1-2-1-2-1-2-3, right? So that's what I'm talking about. That's what the pulse is. Now, going back to this, right? Going back to your question about 6/8, does it have to be a triplet feel? No, it doesn't have to be when it's used as like a time signature and notation in sheet music. Like you could beam it differently. You could beam 6/8 so that it just ends up being like 3/4, and like there's technically nothing wrong with that. It's not like invalid notation to beam every 2 eighth notes together in a 6/8 bar. It's just like unexpected and kind of weird, and will probably throw performers off if you put that sheet music in front of them, and like they'll be able to figure it out, but like why would you do that, right? So that's the thing, is like, it's all convention, right? All of this is convention, but conventions are very important. Communication is very important. To me, language and semantics are very important. So, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I think it's a semantics issue, but also like, my log-based-to rule is not like somebody commented something like, why would you, like, replacing a system you don't like is dumb. Someone commented something like that, where they thought that they basically said that I was trying to replace the system or something. And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to replace the system. I'm just describing the system. Like the log-based-to rule is actually a pretty good capturing of what we already do with these big time signatures. It just is like systemizing it to like kind of cut off the fluff a little bit, and say like, okay, yeah, so like maybe like here and there you see someone who says 15/16 can be felt as like a 5-beat feel with triplet subdivision. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe don't do that, because that's like really inconsistent. But, yeah, you could write it like that. But, let's stick with the logical progression, right? Of like, okay, 6/8 is 2 beats, 9/8 is 3 beats, 12/8 is 4 beats. So 15/8 would be 5 beats in triplets. And that just makes so much sense, right? And then the log-based-to rule agrees with that. So the log-based-to rule agrees with that precedent. The log-based-to rule isn't supposed to be like a new way of thinking about things. I mean, it's a new way of thinking about it, I guess, but it's more like a method to compute what is largely already accepted to be the case, or what is largely already the tendency for people to do. So yes, it is a semantics discussion. Do you think the common sentiment that debating semantics is fruitless? Incorrect. Sometimes debating semantics can be fruitless. And in this case, I don't know. Maybe for some people it is fruitless. Like, you don't have to care about this. I'm not asking you to care about it. I care about it, and I'm making a video about it. You don't have to care about it. This is not a big deal, right? This is not like geopolitics. This is not like your tax dollars going to bombing people overseas. Like, this is music theory. It's not a big deal. But yeah, sometimes debating semantics is fruitless, especially if we're debating semantics about something in order to avoid like some sort of big important issue. But in this case, I think it's fine. So let's see. Compound vocals were an electric organ. Yeah. Well, they definitely are unnatural sounding in there. Stimming, dancing knows no bounds. Yeah, I mean, hell yeah. Like, that can be the case for sure. Some modern classical composers will write out the subdivisions and whatnot. Yeah, that's true. Divisions are a bit more vague. Yeah, it's true, because, I mean, a lot of times, like, we just want to group stuff in 4. Maybe I can talk about that a little bit. I probably want to make a video about this, actually, but here's an experiment that you can try at some point, or maybe you can try it right now. I don't know if this will work on a live stream, but what you can try is like count to 2 over and over again for like a couple of minutes. So go like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Maybe a little slower than that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. And just do that for like 2 or 3 minutes. And then like rest for a little bit. And then count to 4 for a couple of minutes. And that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, same tempo. And I think for me, this is definitely true. And I'm curious what other people would experience here, but I predict you will feel very clearly how much nicer it feels, how much easier it feels to count to 4 over and over again. Like counting to 2 over and over again is kind of like, it's kind of disorienting in a way. And I think that mostly just comes down to the fact that there's no directionality to it. You're just going between two things. Whereas with 1, 2, 3, 4, you're like going in a direction and then cycling back. And it makes it feel like, yeah, it just makes it feel more like stable and nicer. And I guess it's bigger chunks, but still very small chunks that are very manageable. I don't know. I think that's like why we like want to count stuff in 4 so often instead of just counting it in 2, when counting in 2 like looks like it would make sense on paper. People debating with different definitions is fruitless. Well, I mean, when we're debating semantics, we're kind of debating definitions. So arguably we are talking about that. Yes, let's continue the
People
video.
who will tell you
Indeed.
that 6/8 is like too strong.
yeah,
beats
we're-
on 1 and 4. You'll also
we're not going
hear
very fast,
that,
are
like,
we?
the difference between a 2 feel and a 4 feel is strong.
Yeah, we already
default.
got that.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we already
And I'm
did
just
that.
like, I feel like we could avoid a little silly about the meter and compound and duple and triple and simple. Like those words are just not adequate a lot of the time.
But I think those rules are not very intuitive, outdated,
You
in
tell
attack
him
gatekeeping.
cadence.
Because
I wanted to put like a you tell him cadence thing in there, but I didn't because Andrew Meredith did the same thing in one of his videos. So like, let me find this. So here is my playlist of videos that were relevant, and I think in response to time signatures with Nintendo Music by Cadence Hira, in here, somewhere in here, he like says like you tell him cadence to that same clip. So I was like, I probably shouldn't do that. Or I guess I could have clipped him clipping Cadence Hira and saying that. I don't know. But yeah, oh yeah, it's right here.
That's it. There's a lot of rules for the nomenclature of time signatures, but I think those rules are not very intuitive, outdated.
Say it again.
Those rules are not very intuitive, outdated.
I agree that simple
Okay, he says say it again, right. Anyway, same idea, right? And I just had this big ass playlist of things where I was like, the playlist is called Time Signature Evidence. You can't see it because it's behind there, but it's called Time Signature Evidence. I have multiple playlists like this for different topics I want to cover, where I just like compile a bunch of videos that are evidence for whatever kind of claims I want to make. Or not necessarily evidence for my claims, but just like, videos that are relevant.
because of that, time signatures have actually come to mean pretty
What's up,
specific things about meter.
Stefan?
And this is even
Steven?
true in classical music.
Stefaniel?
We say
Yeah, I don't know.
that 6/8 is a compound duple.
The reason why I have enough thoughts on time signatures to fill such a runtime is because, in fact, time signatures are a lot more than just how many of what.
Now, this bears striking resemblance to a certain thing from a certain album. This is Fizz. Have you guys seen Fizz? Look at this thing. Look at this thing. YouTube's not gonna like this. It's so dense. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, maybe I was influenced a little bit. I legitimately did not realize I was parodying, essentially like copying that thing from Fizz. I didn't actually realize it, but I've been listening to Fizz a lot, so it subconsciously influenced me tremendously, obviously. It's mixed too loud in the video. Someone commented about that, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, they're right." It was mixed too loud, unfortunately. This video was a little rushed. There are a lot of little things that were just kind of errors, sloppy little things. I think the big main points got through, but anyway. Okay, I think we're back. Like we have our viewers back. Anyway, welcome back.
What is music? That's the first question that we can ask in music theory, right? It's kind of
so originally in the script. I don't know if I can. Let me see. Let me see if I can like show the history. How do you show the history? Okay, so version histoire. Let's see. So I think, yeah, like, let's see. If we go back to, I don't know, May 7th. No, I already had cut it by then, huh? I know that at some point a while ago. Oh, you guys can probably hear that. I have friends jamming in the other room, so that might come through a little bit. Let me see if I can close some doors. But sorry, first let me find this. When did I change it? Because I know, yeah. So I was going to do. No, wait, it's still not there. How far back do I have to go to find this? Yeah, here we go. I was gonna do this thing where it was gonna be like the great abstraction space of music, and I was gonna illustrate like this huge like graph of concepts of music theory and how they relate to each other in terms of abstraction. But I realized that I eventually realized that was like not a good idea, and it was just gonna make stuff way more confusing because it was hard to make the graph make sense. I like tried to like draw it on a notebook, and I couldn't really make it work. Anyway, but let's see, where was I going to say this? Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about this a little bit later. Let me go see if I can close some doors because this sounds really loud from them. All right.
like the highest level of abstraction within music theory before you exit music theory on the way up. Like here's the thing, is it music? So something can be music or not, and then if it is music, it might have rhythm. And if it has rhythm, it might have some kind of meter. Now let's talk more about what meter actually is. A meter is basically kind of an implied regular rhythmic structure. So it's not necessarily the exact rhythm that is actually being played, but it's some sort of more regular thing that you kind of hear everything relative to. It sounds kind of strange to talk about that. Like, why would we invent this whole implied ghost rhythm thing?
Yeah, why would we do that, huh? Why would we do that? Why would we do that? Let's see. What do we got? Is this that dubstep phone-on guy? That is that dubstep phone-on guy. And Israel Strom, who both put like 4 digits of hours into that thing. I welcome friend jamming in the background. Yeah, you'll probably still hear them a little bit. In essays of explaining the entire history of the universe to give context for y squared equals k. Yes.
Why not just talk about?
Yeah, well, music notation, you know, it's not a designed system, right? It's an evolved system, essentially, right? And so it's actually, you know, pretty good once you learn it, but it is hard to learn, and it just has way too much momentum to really, like, overhaul it. Like, there's just no way, right? There's just no way you could do that. But I will say that I think, generally speaking, like I am not a good sight reader. I'm trying to work on it. I'm trying to work on my sight reading a little bit nowadays, but I'm not very good at it. But I know that people who have told me that, you know, it's really not bad. Like, it's really not that bad when you get good at it. And I think that's probably true of any possible system for notating music.
The rhythm that's there. But it turns out that meter is very, very
true. The Tantacruel notation video. Well, there are multiple of those, but I assume you're talking about Notation Must Die. Notation Must Die, The Battle for How We Read Music. That is a good video. Yeah, Tantacruel is great. He's great.
Or to how we feel music.
And
I'm not going to get into the weeds about that stuff.
And I should have gotten into the weeds about that stuff just a little bit. So I kind of already talked about this, but yeah, like the pulse that I talk about, what I mean by the real beat or the pulse is the rhythm that you move your body to with least effort. The rhythm that you walk to, or the rhythm that you like bob your head to with least effort. And that can be subjective, absolutely, but that's what I mean by the pulse. And so like once you have said, okay, this piece of music has this pulse for me, then we can talk about what time signature is it in analytically.
In this video, but Adam Neely has several good videos about this stuff. His speed limit video from about a year ago, you should go watch that.
I still very
if you
much
wanna know
recommend
more
the speed
about
limit video
how
as
our
well.
bodies relate to the pulse in music. If there is a meter, then perhaps there's some kind of time signal.
Yeah, so this is my like really lame imitation of what I would have done for the great abstraction space of music, right? Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I should obviously have branches coming off of the left side of rhythm and meter, but I just figured like that's kind of obvious at this point, right? And I was like, it didn't feel worth it. I probably should have, but sure.
Now, time signatures are a Western notation concept that has maybe evolved into a Western metric concept in part. And I mean, untangling that is kind of what I'm trying to do in this video.
A numerical notation device like tab or like where it has the numbers of the scale degrees.
But they are a Western concept, and so meter in the more general sense is present in all sorts of musics in the world. And you know, admittedly, meter and the like classical notion of meter, that comes from poetry, and that also has a Western lineage. But the general notion of like some sort of implied rhythmic structure, like that's present in most musics. Time signatures, though, are very specific to Western music. And so like, yeah, you could think about
I
a
love
rag
this
in Hindustani music as being in some kind of time signature.
Because, okay, here's the thing, right? Like, I know that what I'm saying here is correct objectively, that, like, you know, applying music theories from a completely different world to a completely different music, like, is kind of folly. But admittedly, Hindustani music is probably not the best example of this, because Hindustani music actually does, like, share a lot of similarities with a lot of Western music, particularly jazz. Like more similarities than like some other like musics from around the world. But anyway, I know that like, you know, apply, like you can misapply them like that, but it still like feels that way because of course I've internalized the concept of a time signature. So I'm like, oh yeah, of course, like this does sound like it's basically in 4/4 with some like over the bar line stuff. But but this edit actually really helped me to like feel like that's true, in addition to believing like consciously that it's true. So it's like, first it's like, okay, yeah, this is like 4/4, I guess. I don't know.
I guess. And you could think about.
And then it's like,
Beethoven
that's basically like
using
doing
tal.
this, right? It's like, yeah. Clearly Beethoven is, you know, he's mixing teen tal and jap tal, and you know, that's, you know, I see you, Beethoven. And it's like that just like plainly paints how ridiculous it is. So, and but the thing is also that like, yeah, you could do that. Like you could take the tal patterns from Hindustani music and like lay them out in a Beethoven piece. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, and you could make it fit. You could make it make sense. But it's like that's what you're doing when you are trying to define a Hindustani piece in time signatures.
What makes time signatures fundamentally confusing, in my opinion, is that they are potentially highly subjective at multiple levels of
the stream's
abstraction.
back. Welcome back.
There
44.
is a classic kind of rite of passage.
Oh yeah,
in-
we just missed the like big point, the biggest point of the video, Loki. But yeah, multiple levels of abstraction. So,
learning about time signatures, which is confusing 3/4 and 6/8, or being confused about the difference between them. Countless people have asked,
This was
what's
so
the difference
shocking.
between
Like,
3/4?
I looked this up and I was like, first of all, did you know that Google doesn't show this by default anymore? That's super lame. But if you click on tools, then it'll show it. But like, this is an exact phrase search. This is not just looking up what is the difference between 3/4 and 6/8. This is looking up the exact phrase, what is the difference between 3/4 and 6/8 question mark. Actually, the question mark might not be considered to be part of the exact phrase. But anyway, and there's 100,000 results. It's insane.
And 6/8, and there are countless videos on the internet.
And there's so many of
countless
these,
music
yeah.
teachers explaining
There's
this
just
to their
so many.
students every day, I can only assume. It's a classic problem because 3/4 and 6/8 are two of the simplest time signatures out there. They're two of the most common time signatures out there, but they are equal to one another as fractions. And this is the main reason why people will discourage you from thinking about time signatures as fractions. Now, the classic wisdom is that 3/4 is felt as 3 beats actually, and each of those beats has duplet subdivision. So it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2
he's
and
doing
3
the
and.
3/4
Whereas
pattern.
6/8
Now he's gonna
is
do
thought
this.
of as
He's gonna do the
2
6/8
beats
pattern.
with triplet
Oh my God, he's
subdivision.
gonna do it. He's-
One triplet, two triplet, one triplet, two
my
triplet. But
God.
what nobody talks about is
Admittedly, I'm being a little dramatic here. So people do talk about this. People do talk about this sometimes, but this is not like when people ask what's the difference between 3/4 and 6/8, nobody answers that question with this. People will talk about this in like other contexts, but if you go to a thread where somebody's asking on Reddit or Stack Exchange or something, and you go through that thread and they say just like, what's the difference between 3/4 and 6/8? Like, admittedly, I guess it does kind of still answer the question, but when people ask that question, they're almost always their confusion about the time signatures is almost always in that first way. But when they hear music, they often will be confused about this as well. So, I mean, it's a little dramatic to say nobody's talking about this, but usually it's not addressed in those answers.
that there's actually 2 whole halves to this confusion.
Two
The
whole
other
halves.
half is people confusing 3/4 and 6/8 not in the notation, but that in analysis, in hearing stuff. People will hear stuff that's in 3 and think that it's in 6, or hear stuff that's in 6 and think that it's in 3. So I like time signatures, as you might have guessed, and I like to celebrate time signature days throughout the year. So like the day before this video goes out is going to be
He doesn't know. It was 2 days before the video came
5/8.
out.
It'll be May 8th. So I'll probably post something on that day about 5/8. On March 4th, 3/4, I posted an Instagram story and I asked people
Yeah.
for their favorite songs in 3/4 time. And several people responded with songs that were in 6/8. These people were not confusing 6/8 and 3/4 because they were thinking about the same measure. They were confusing the eighth notes of 6/8 with the quarter notes of 3/4. Now, some of these were fairly clear cut.
It was so funny. I can only assume he's probably not like watching the stream right now, but this guy, Glenn Case, just happened to find this video, which was so funny. Though, I mean, his comment implied that he just happened to find it. He commented on the video and he was like, I was watching this in the background and then imagine my surprise when I just heard what sounded like my cover of Holiday. And then it was. And I did link his video in my description and tag him, I think, but I don't really know how tags work on YouTube. Like, I don't know if you get notified about that. So I don't know, but it sounded like he just happened upon it, which is super funny because like I wouldn't think of like this, like I kind of conceptualize this sphere of YouTube to be like, adjacent but not kind of in the same realm, like this sphere of like split screen covers of rock songs. Like, to like the time signature nerd sphere. But admittedly, you know, they're obviously going to be at least adjacent. So maybe fair enough. But, you know, it's not like Weezer Holiday is some like crazy prog song, right?
But some of them were a little bit more subtle. You could think of it in 3/4, or you could.
Yeah, so this was really interesting. I expected, like, when somebody submitted this song, I was like, oh yeah, like that's in 3/4 for sure. I can feel that, because it kind of feels like every beat has the same feeling to it. Whereas 6/8, usually you have some sense of like a backbeat on every second beat. But, you know, it's notated both ways. Sometimes it's written 3/4, sometimes it's written 6/8. And these measures are not the same size. These measures are actually twice as long as these measures. So
I'd think of it in 6/8.
So, and then also, yeah, it's also notated in 12/8. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like the layers of subjectivity, is like you can be like, oh, I hear triplet subdivision and I hear like these downbeats and upbeats. But actually, like, how big are those groupings? Are they 2 beats at a time or 4 beats at a time? And depending on your answer to that, you might notate it in 6/8 versus 12/8.
This is kind of where we're at, right? Whether a time signature exists at all is potentially subjective, and then assuming that one does, the details of the metric feel can be subjective. Like,
right. And so this is kind of what like the Norwegian wood is a fantastic example of this. It's a simple example of this, where it's like, okay, you might feel 3 fast beats, or you might feel 2 slow beats, or you might feel 4 slow beats, where the slow beats would be in triplet subdivision, and the fast beats would be those divisions. But you can like like you can bob your head to that. It's like a pretty fast head bob, but 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Like you definitely can, but you can also go and the tempos of those 2 head bobs are both kind of extreme. Like one of them is pretty slow and one of them is pretty fast for a head bob, and so it's easy to feel it either way, or it's kind of hard to feel it either way. But it's like, it's not like one is clearly the winner of feeling the pulse. And so that part is subjective. But then even when you say like there are, you know, 6 beats or whatever, like a composer might write it in 6/4. I would think that's a kind of silly way to do it, but they could do it, and they could write it that way, and they wouldn't technically be using the notation in an invalid way by doing that.
what is the pulse exactly?
Happy 5/12
How many
day,
of those
hell yeah.
pulses should be grouped together?
Is it actually
What is the
5/12?
subdivision
I guess it is,
exactly?
yeah.
Are we actually in triplet subdivision, or is it just one? That's all potentially
Yeah.
debatable.
5/12
And
notes.
then even if we agree on that,
5/8
we
note
still might not
triplets.
agree on what time signature to call it, particularly if we have different usage in mind. You see, time signatures, like most music theory concepts, can be
Me when I'm talking to
used
someone named
either in a
Sage.
directive way, like where you write a time signature on a score and you say, here's the piece of music, you read it, and that's great. Or
One could also call this prescriptive, but I didn't want to go there.
you say, hey, play something in 4. Or you can use time signatures, as you could most music theory concepts, in analysis, in description. And obviously, you know, direction and description will overlap, because a lot of direction is description, right? You're describing what you want the output to be, and then the player figures out how to do that. But you can talk about a piece of music being in a certain time signature, and that can be useful and interesting analysis, even if you would never use that time signature to actually direct it. For instance,
Is there somewhere you can get lossless downloads of my music? Oh boy. Is there ever? There's this little website called Bandcamp. It's pretty cool. And I'm on there. And I will just send it in the chat. I thought no one would ever ask. You can buy my latest album for $7. This is the cover. Isn't it a fun little cover? Look at me. I'm a quartet, but I'm not playing string instrument. Well, I'm playing one string instrument. Fun stuff, right? And it's in my wish list. Yeah, that's complicated, but yes.
The song Threshold by Sungazer is in
19 tuplets at a
Oh, I remember I had to like make sure I got the match cut, so that my face was in the same spot as Sean's face, so that your eyes didn't like get like disoriented and have to move around. It's also jarring because Sean's video is so much better looking than mine.
low tempo of 33 beats per minute. Sounds like an
Also,
odd-time
he's at a
signature,
different
but it's
focal length.
technically in 4/4.
So this is like a really, really strong example of where the conceptual time signature is not the same as the time signature you would write it in. Although it's funny because Threshold is so slow in 4/4, if you think of it that way, that honestly, if I heard it and I didn't know that they were thinking about it in 4/4, like, I don't know, maybe I would think about it as a super slow 4/4 because of the like kick drum snare drum pattern, because snare drums really, suggest a backbeat, right? But like, I probably would say, oh yeah, this is clearly like, 5/5/6. Or sorry, 6/6/7. This is clearly 6/6/7, and therefore it's 1916. So I think 1916 is a great descriptor of it, but also it has this like higher level thing that's going on with that. But yeah, 1916 would be probably felt, or one possible like grouping of 1916 would be a 3-pulse feel, which is what they're doing, which is 6/6/7.
Technically in 4/4.
This isn't just for avant-garde progressive jazz fusion though. Like this is also present in cut time. What's the point of cut time in the modern day? What's the difference between cut time and just a fast 2/4? Well, there's less ink on the page.
Yeah.
The note values, they look more different from one another. It's just kind of nice to read. That's it. That's the reason in sheet music. There's also a history to it. Andrew Meredith has this video on meter and time signature where he showcased.
He actually has several. He actually has quite a few. He's like a significant portion of my playlist here. So we've got the 2 Cadence Hero videos about every time signature. And then we've got Andrew Meredith, and then we have Andrew Meredith, and Andrew Meredith. We have 5 Andrew Meredith videos, which I think actually, do they add up to as long as my video? Roughly speaking, yeah. This is 11 plus 14 is 25, plus 17 is 32, plus 10 is 42, plus 14 is 56. Wow, so it adds up to almost exactly the same length as my video. His 5 videos. That's funny. I hope I did the math right there.
There's lots of examples of where the meter and the time signature don't really agree. I highly recommend it.
The Blue Lake Overture by John Barnes Chance is the perfect example. This piece should not be written in 4/4
This
and
is a
is
crazy
honestly
example
made
here.
harder being written that way.
Like, it's so strange, right? To write this in 4/4. I don't know any of the details behind this. This was just like, wow, that's such a good example if it's really written as 4/4. But you gotta wonder, like, the composer surely wasn't thinking about it as 4/4. So maybe this was like a weird, like engraving problem with some like middleman, or maybe he just wrote it in 4/4 and that was that. I don't know.
Now, according
so
to his
good,
YouTube
right?
bio, he's a full-time musician. He's a French horn player. He's played all these classical pieces, and he's presumably living and breathing in this world of sheet music.
I don't know what
and
the
that
bravo
makes
is
his
for, but thank
perspective
you.
on this whole thing very important. But it's not the only one. Reddit user T Dammer has this great comment in response to someone confused about the bottom number.
In classical music, it's almost entirely arbitrary. The bottom number is chosen at the composer's discretion, entirely based on notational convenience. Time signatures are chosen to maximize readability.
Yeah, so here's a fun little thing. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna open up DaVinci Resolve. Is this a good idea right now to open up the project, the video project? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's a terrible idea. But let me go to the main timeline. Okay. So here it is. And let me see if I can find where this was. Where are we in the video right now? We are at 16 minutes. So we're about here. Oh no, we're here. Yeah. So check this out. This is like how this works. So I have like this base of the image, and then like I don't know, this might seem like really mundane, I don't know, but I was very like happy to like kind of figure this out in the edit, because I've never done like this exact kind of an edit before, where you like highlight portions of a text and keep the other parts of the text grayed out. So then I made all these copies that have exactly the same position, but then they have a different crop. So it's just a bunch of copies that are cropped to a very specific part, and they are full opacity, but this lower layer is just like low opacity, and since the black background, so that just essentially darkens it. And I was just like, hey, that's kind of fun. I don't know, that might seem really lame, but I was proud of that.
Other music genres, however.
And the voiceover here is from Arachnus, who was in the chat earlier. I don't know if he's here right now, but this is he was one of the time signature Illuminati as well, so I don't know. I guess I infiltrated them.
Are slightly different. To capture aspects of rhythm that don't exist in class.
Oh my god. Yes, obviously you're talking about Andrew Meredith. Sorry, there was actually Stephen. I don't know if Stephen is still in the chat here. Stephen Weigel, but he called me Andrew in the comments, and I was like, that's interesting. No, like nobody calls me Andrew.
Classical music. Most modern genres have developed additional conventions that dictate the exact time signature to use for a given rhythmic feel.
But I think that like primed me to like think about Andrew referring to me in this chat. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Bravo, Andrew Meredith, indeed. Yeah, his videos are good, and they like have like no views, relatively speaking, like relative to my video. And I mean, a big part of that is just because Adam Neely's in my video. One can assume, but yeah, they're good videos. I mean, I linked one of them, and then you can go to his channel and find the others as well.
So to complicate matters
like in the description of my video, I linked his.
Further with respect to the multiple levels of abstraction that are subjective, time signatures are also treated differently in different styles of music. A lot of people who are learning time signatures are interested.
I should say, like, usually I don't get views either. Like, this video is like exceptional for me, very exceptional. I haven't got this kind of views in a long time, and I imagine that this video is going to end up being probably like top 5 most viewed videos on my channel. We'll see where it is like after a year or something, but it's gonna be up there. It's already pretty far up there.
Of music that treat time signatures differently from one another, so they're gonna get conflicting answers from these different worlds. Now, I was classically trained in piano and violin when I was a kid,
all the Andrews together.
But in the last few years, I have not really dealt a lot with sheet music.
Oh yeah, isn't Andrew Huang's 1916 video? Yeah, I didn't actually end up referencing that, but I did put it in here because it was it's good. This 1916 video from Andrew Huang, and he like talks about like, oh yeah, you're gonna split it up into 2s and 3s, but then like those are gonna be further grouped, and that's what I'm talking about with the layers of subdivision. He talks about that in this video. It's a really good one. You know what I should do is I should make this playlist public. Maybe I'll do that after we're done here.
And I haven't dealt with classical music really since high school.
Oh my goodness. This piece. So, okay, a little bit of context here.
Music really since high school.
So I kind of put this in here to be like, hey guys, by the way, I do have some experience in like classical music. I've written pieces for string orchestra. I've conducted a string orchestra. Now, admittedly, just this one time. So it's not like I have tons of experience, but like my orchestra director in high school, kind of like just taught me how to conduct. And then I was like, cool. And you know, you can see this portion, I don't mention it, but this portion is in 7/8, and it's like as a short long, like 2 2 3 7 8. Right? So I'm basically conducting in 3. I'm doing the 3/4 conducting pattern, which but that last beat is slower. So that's, you know, that's what we're talking about. It's short long, because there are actually 3 beats in 7/8. And yeah, I remember like that day. No, come on.
Music really since high school.
That performance, one of the best like moments, I guess, of my life up to that point, at least. And I would say probably still today, like it was just like so magical conducting my piece. This was the last piece of the last concert of the year of my senior year of high school. So this was like the last piece that my whole class ever played in this orchestra, and like being able to like finish that off with my own piece was super fun. And the whole thing is on YouTube. The whole thing, it's linked in the description of the main video as well. And it's called On Artificial Intelligence, and it was like I was interested in AI way before it was like in the public eye, and I went to college with the intention to get into deep learning and stuff, which is not really where I am these days. Yeah, anyway, that's the whole thing. But yeah, I had a very kind of like optimistic view about what AI might be in the future. I composed this thing in 2018, so this was like during the deep learning boom in software engineering, but like the public did not really know about deep learning or neural networks or anything like that yet. So anyway, this section, I guess, was representing some sort of bad thing that was happening in the imagined future of AI, though. So maybe that was the best section to put up.
And adjacent spaces.
Fizz.
It's really nice to have vocabulary in certain time signatures. If we're having a jam and you say, hey, let's play something in 7/8, then it's really nice to have some shared idea of what 7/8 is. But when it comes to sheet music, when it comes to analyzing a piece of music that was written in sheet music, trying to predict or figure out what time signature it was written in, there's just no way to do that with certainty. There's stuff out there that just is completely wild, like a really slow 3 feel that's written in 3/8.
Yeah, this is wild, right? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. What was Schumann thinking? Schumann, you know, great legendary composer. What what was he thinking here, putting this in 3/8? I don't know. But also Andrew Meredith commented with the source for the YouTube video source for this. So that is also in the description of the main video now. I'm realizing I could have probably just asked him.
Or how about something that sounds like it's in a fast 2 and is actually in cut time, but at double the tempo you'd expect?
Okay, this was super weird. Like, I hope it wasn't too like jarring, I guess, but like my camera just like decided to look really different when I went back to do reshoots, even though I changed nothing. I had exactly the same lighting, and I waited until it was dark so I didn't have any sunlight that was like a variable in the equation. But then it just like
sheet music, trying to predict,
you know, it looked like this,
figure out what time to expect,
and then it looked like that. What happened? I don't know. I tried to like color grade it, but I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I was running out of time, and I just like couldn't make the color grade happen. So it just ended up looking like that. But this piece is wild. This piece is wild. Like, there's an even faster performance of this by the oh no, what are they called? What are they called? Hang on. I will find them. Shostakovich String Quartet 8. The Dover Quartet, that's right. Even faster. This performance is wild. This really feels like the ideal performance of it. This is the whole note. Whole note, whole note, whole note, whole note, whole note. Whole. Like, it's not even a slow tempo. It's not just that the pulse is a whole note. It's like actually like a moderate tempo whole note. Dover Quartet are crazy, man. Anyway, yeah, it's crazy stuff. And now this feels slow in comparison, right? Crazy stuff, right? To have a whole note get the beat is, yeah, it's pretty unusual. Yeah, exactly. That's my thing. Some Bulgarian songs are like that. Short, long. Adam Neely might have talked about it in a video. He absolutely did. And in fact, in that video was about 9/8, so it would have been like short, long. 3 shorts and a long. And yes, absolutely. Usually whole notes don't get the beat. But it hasn't always been that way. History. In the late 13th century. You guys like this transition? Yeah. We're going way back, baby. And then I pitched down the sound effect for in the late 13th century. History. Franco of Cologne. This is real, by the way. I did not Photoshop this. This is actually James Franco doing a Cologne ad thing for Gucci, apparently. So, yeah, Franco of Cologne. Isn't it beautiful? Published his treatise called Ars Cantus Mensurabilis, which means the art of measured song. In doing so, he essentially introduced the idea to Western music notation at the time that a note's duration should be discernible simply from how the note is written on the page. If that sounds really basic and fundamental, that's because it is. So I said that I would get back to this, I think. I didn't get into a lot of detail here. I spent a lot of time researching the history of time signatures and mensural notation, and the vast majority of what I learned did not make the cut. Like, I showed a few examples of pieces. I literally poured through dozens of scores, and like hundreds of pages of dozens of scores, multiple dozens. And I then put like 5 of them in the video or something like that, right? And I'm going to go through more. But, well, sorry. I mean, I think I probably went through like 100 scores-ish, but then I saved a couple of dozen of them that were like, that seemed like important to the progression of time signatures and bar lines and stuff. But there were a lot of them. Like, I think I can probably pull up the folder I have of all these downloads from IMSLP. So like, yeah, so here is like this folder of all these documents. So how many is this actually? 29, right? And then a couple of other ones. This is Philippa Ovenden's doctoral thesis, which I read some of, and that's where I found out about the Vitruvius from the 14th century who made the metric trees back then. And then I also was able to get into contact with Philippa Ovenden, and I'm like still in contact with her, and hopefully we'll be able to find out some more and maybe make another video in the future going deeper into the history and stuff. But anyway, what I was trying to get to though was that in mensural notation, like, and this is shown in the early music sources video, which again I highly recommend. Like I said in the video, it's a great video on mensural notation, and that early music sources video talks about this. The note values didn't just like directly translate. There were all sorts of like, there was like kind of a formula to figure out like, okay, if a long is followed by a breve, then it's imperfect, but if it's not, if it's followed by another long, then it's perfect. So it was like you could determine it from the notation alone and not just from like the vibes and the context and the words, but it still wasn't like super direct. Even when Franco of Cologne was talking about this, the super direct stuff, that didn't happen until much later, like hundreds of years later, kind of on the way out of mensural notation. This essentially kicked off an era of music notation where String Quartet 8, slowest actually. Yeah, of course, not quite. Get on my level, Shasti. There was kind of an inflation that happened with notes over the century. Is there a low threshold BPM whereby the human brain can no longer maintain an accurate sense of rhythmic pulse? Well, golly gee, there sure is. And in fact, we already talked about a song that's kind of all about that, which is Threshold by Sungazer. Threshold by Sungazer is a 33 BPM in 19 tuplets kind of thing, and 33 BPM is roughly that threshold. So about 2 seconds, basically. This is obviously going to vary between person to person, but generally speaking, around 2 seconds between pulses, you stop being able to feel it as rhythm. And yes, Lemming, you are writing a piece in 4/2 right now. That's cool. What does that mean for you? I'm curious. Like, are you doing it in 4/2 just because you like want it to look nicer? Oh, that was what I don't know if I've hit that yet in this video, but I remember I mentioned cut time and like how cut time, it just kind of looks nicer on the page. It's less ink. And I didn't show like a picture of like, you know, a piece written in 2/2 versus a piece with the same piece written in 4/4. Like that's like so obvious. Why did I not do that? But anyway, I realized that after the fact, but obviously I should have done that. Trees up until the 17th century, basically, composers would start adding shorter and shorter note durations into their scores. Yeah. But performers over. Okay.
For the reason that it has taken its.
Oh yeah. So this voiceover was another friend of mine.
From the Most High Trinity,
Alexander Mark,
which is the true and pure perfection. Yet the imperfect longa, under the same figuration as the perfect, signifies 2 tempora only.
And this is literally just straight out of the translation of Ars Cantis Mensurabilis, so this is legit. It's the Trinity. So yeah, there's a lot of myths around the effects of religion throughout music history. Little but devil
in this
tritone
case,
there.
it's legit.
The Trinity, because the tritone was not banned in the medieval church or anything like that.
The Holy Trinity. That's why
Adam Neely has a whole video about that myth and how it came to be.
Perfect meant subdivided into 3. Now, by the 15th century, the long had become
complete. A half circle.
These 4 symbols are essentially the ancestors of time signatures, and later on we have stuff like this piece from around the 1500s,
wait, I love this,
which has a full circle with no dot, so that's perfect tempus, imperfect prolatio, and also perfect doodling.
This image, like, I had the thought, right? I had the thought when I was going through the manuscripts and I found this. I had the thought when I looked at this guy, because this is from like around the turn of the 16th century, right? This is around the year 1500. 1492, right, was when like Columbus landed on the shores of North America, Turtle Island. And so like tomatoes are from the Americas. Tomatoes, you know, are not from Europe, even though like they're heavily associated with Italian cuisine. They are not from that region at all. A completely different continent across a huge ocean. So this guy, whoever drew this, almost certainly never had seen or heard of a tomato before. And I just, not that this image has anything to do with tomatoes, but I just thought like, wow, the person who drew this image, look at this image. Look at this. What is going on here? The person who drew this didn't know what a tomato was. That was my thought. And I was like, that's amazing, right? Isn't that amazing? Gonna ban the tritone at your house to bring the myth to life. Hey, do it.
In this score from 1583, we do see that C that we now know as common time.
Yeah, but no measures.
And we're seeing shorter note durations, but there are no bar lines yet. And check this out. This looks a lot like modern notation.
Man, this one was so crazy to find.
But there's some weird things going on here. So it looks like we're in.
This is like the earliest thing that I could find with round note heads. There probably is stuff earlier, but it's kind of like fairly. It's not super rushed, I guess, but it's not this like really precise straight lines that you find with the other stuff. So that really makes it look a lot more like modern notation. Though you can kind of see how like the stems are still mostly in the center of the note head as opposed to the side like they are nowadays. But like at a glance, this does just look like modern music notation, as opposed to like the other stuff, which at a glance you're like, whoa, that's weird and different and old.
But then actually most of the measures have 4 half notes.
Yeah, I don't know.
But not all of them have 4 half notes. This measure has 2 and this measure has 6. And then the clef.
Yeah, so like these little tiny marks are rests, and they're not as tiny anymore, but the vertical ones I believe are like half note rests, effectively minim rests, and then the right angle ones are quarter note rests.
What's going on with that? And then
let me verify that, right? So no. Sorry. Yes, that is the case. Yeah. So you can see like how this is like a half note, 2 more half notes, and then another half note. So that's 4 half notes in this measure. And then this one is like quarter rest, half note, quarter note, half note, whole note, half note. They were still called like minims and semibreves, and I think this one would have been called a fusa. I'm not 100% sure about that, but yeah.
This staff has 8.
It was not called like a crotchet quite yet, I don't think, in 1601.
8 lines.
Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure.
Instead of 5. It's a bit of a fever dream of notation, but this is from 1601. This was kind of the transition period into modern notation, so we saw some weird hybrids around that time. By the late 17th century, we had basically gotten modern notation. Like here, we start in common time, and then we actually change to 3/2, and I mean, you look at it, it lines up. That is 3/2 in the modern sense. You know, and then by the early 18th century, we had Bach, and we had stuff in 12/8 and like fully modern time signatures.
It was surprisingly hard to find an actual Bach manuscript, because most of Bach's music has been like transcribed or like reprinted, rewritten, and Bach himself also like had people who would copy his works, even like in like a handwritten way. And I think that the image I just showed there was actually Bach, because like it looked different from everything else I could find, but I'm not 100% sure that was actually Bach who like wrote that ink in that image specifically. But definitely he was writing those time signatures wherever he was writing.
We're here. Mensural notation and the history of time signatures and all this stuff is very fascinating to me, and I think maybe in the future
I was also really surprised just like to see how kind of like messy the notation looked, handwritten, assuming that was actually like Bach writing it himself in that scan. Like it's really messy looking, so I can see why you would have someone else copy it.
I'll do a deeper dive on that.
Yeah, why is he holding the ball like that?
What I want to take away from it here today, with this little bit that we've seen, is that time signatures have never really been about like how many eighth notes there are in a measure. They predate the widespread usage of measures. They also used to provide information that was actually concrete. Like you couldn't just take the mensuration away and still figure out how to play it exactly. And most importantly, I think for me here today, time signatures have always been about subdivision.
And I forgot to have the title like zoom out on that one. Just totally missed it.
All right.
Just a mistake,
So,
straight up.
Bear with me and stick around for the caveats, but let's do some music theory.
Okay, so metric
First,
tree. Well,
I want to
let's
visualize meter with something I'll call a metric tree. Now, independently from me, Music Representations also came up with this idea, and that YouTube channel has a bunch of shorts where they break down mostly Meshuggah songs with metric trees. And also a little bit before either of us, there was Johannes Vetulis in the 14th century.
This was such a crazy find, because I came up with the idea for metric trees independently of Music Representations and of Johannes Vetulis like a while ago. Like I've been thinking about like making a video where I use the metric tree diagram idea. I've been thinking about that for a long time. But I found Philippa Ovenden's doctoral thesis, which is called Representations of Time in Late Medieval Music, and I was like, yes, this is what I'm looking for. It turns out that it actually doesn't have that much about like time signatures or like measures or the development of that kind of stuff, but it had this in it, and I found this, and I was like, oh my god, that's insane. This is literally a metric tree. Look at this thing. And it's notated in the I guess like the additive way. I don't know what terms to use for it, but like you see how like the number, like the way that my metric trees look in my video, right? Like these 12s would actually each say 2, because in my metric tree thing, the number at the node is how many children it has, because I'm thinking about each layer in that way, and you just kind of have to like do the math to figure out what it all adds up to. Whereas, you know, music representations and Johannes Vatula's were doing like the total number of leaf nodes that are descendants of any given node, right? So at a node, how many leaf nodes are there that are descendants of this node? In total, there are 3, so this one says 3. For this one, there are, well, okay, I guess actually this doesn't really make sense, does it? Because this one says 6, but actually there are actually 12 leaf nodes that are descendants of this 6. So I'm not sure exactly, but like, you know, you can see how it's very similar at least. So I was like, you know, we're not totally making something new here. This is something like a metric tree has been thought of since at least the 14th century. He also did something like a metric tree. And what's nice about a metric tree is that it can represent the meter in a pretty great amount of detail. We just kind of have... Yeah, so this is like, this would be a lot of slow 6/8. So I bring up slow 6/8 later in the video, right? And a lot of slow 6/8 is swung. So it'll be like... Right? You've heard that beat before, right? Especially with like the kick that's swinging into the downbeat of the new measure. And yeah, so Stephen Guy, welcome to the stream by the way, says there's a missing 6. And that is interesting because it's like, well, shouldn't there be a 6 somewhere since this is 6/8? And that's kind of the difference that I was just describing, like between how music representations one works and how mine works. Now, when I make the app, when I like release the app, when I release the Metador app, like it will have that as an option. Like you'll be able to toggle it between those two different modes, right? But the way that mine works is that each node just says how many direct children it has, because that gives you the idea that like this is a 2-beat feel. Each of those beats are subdivided into 3, and then each of those beats are subdivided into 3. And this has some advantages because you couldn't really put a 6 up at the top of this, because there are actually in total 18 leaf nodes here. There are 18 ones here because we're actually going down to the second layer subdivision for this swung 6/8 feel. And like, yeah, I guess you could have an 18 there, and you could say like, yeah, a swung 6/8 a swung 6/8 is in total 18 of those like second layer subdivisions. But like, are you gonna call it 18/16? Like, no, because 6/8 is a canon time signature that we just are like thinking about applying swing to. It's just swung 6/8. It's like there's no reason to call it 18/16. It's vocabulary that's well established. 6/8 is a canonical time signature that's well established, and this is swinging it in triplets, so it's a swung slow 6/8, and so it would be kind of confusing to have this be an 18 in this particular case if what we're trying to represent is a swung 6/8. Now you could have something that maybe isn't using the vocabulary of 6/8 as much and has this same metric tree where you could call it more like 18/16, but it's probably a tough sell. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the stream latency can do that. There's a missing 6. Oh, right, from Johannes Vatula's. Okay, sorry. That makes a lot of sense. My bad. But yes, agreed. There is a missing 6 there, seemingly. I'm not really sure what was going on with that. Felipa did tell me like that Vatula's tree diagrams are kind of complicated and that I probably should use a different example if I was going to do an educational video. And I was like, oh yeah, no, it's fine because I'm just like kind of mentioning it in passing. I'm not actually getting into any detail about his metric trees. It's just really funny that exists. Like I freaking lost it when I found that. Anyway.
to say like which layer on the tree is the pulse, and then we have an idea of
Are
how
you
the pulse is
hydrated?
subdivided, how those subdivisions are subdivided, if there's multiple layers of that, and also of how the pulses are grouped, and maybe even the hypermeter above.
Okay, check this out. This is the biggest metric tree in the video. This is 12 bar blues, all the way from like the super hypermeter, I guess, the hypermeter of the hypermeter, down to the subdivision where you're swinging it. So a 12 bar blues is going to be 12 bars. So that's why we have 12 items on the meter level. The meter level kind of equating to measures, right, by default. So on the meter level, we have 12 because it's 12 bars. On the pulse level, then we're going to have 48 because there are 48 total beats. But then, of course, 12 bar blues is usually grouped as like 4 bars at a time. But then, you know, it's also kind of grouped as 3 of those 4 bars. Or, yeah, because it's grouped at 3 bars at a time and it's 12 total, that makes it 3 at the top level. So, 12 bar blues. And then we get a little editing error here where the video comes in a few frames early. So, and you get that.
An easy example would be something like the breakdown of Does She Know off of my latest album. Or we could revisit
so
Threshold by Sungazer.
And this is the pulse right here. This is what you bob your head to with least effort.
I want to propose a system for...
You could bob your head slower, but you would kind of have to be very intentional about that, I think.
Taking a time...
And you'd have to like try to bob your head slower.
Time signature and
right? Which makes it like probably not the pulse.
Computing the possible metric trees.
Okay, so here,
based on that time signature.
So here is, I think, one of my biggest mistakes in this video is framing the log-base-2 rule first and foremost as going from time signatures to metric trees, because it really should be the other way around. So I said, I mentioned this earlier, but yes, the log-base-2 rule is a many-to-one function that maps metric trees to time signatures. So given a metric tree, given the details of the meter, you can then compute the plausible time signature to call it. And again, I'm not proposing this as like a new way of naming meters. I'm saying this is basically the mathematical description of what we already do most of the time. But this is really how I should have probably approached it first, is to talk about like when you have a metric tree, you can figure out what time signature to call it. Because a specific time signature is an abstraction of a bunch of specific metric trees, potentially. I mean, if the time signature is really small and simple, then it'll be kind of one-to-one. But for big ones, right, like 19, like there's a bunch of ways there's 86 ways, in fact. I calculated that. There's 86 different ways to divide up 19 into 2s and 3s. Fun fact. But anyway, yeah.
And sometimes there will only be one possible metric tree, which means you have figured out that time signature. If there are multiple, then you at least have narrowed down your options, and this will, I think, codify a lot of the implicit rules that we have for
the metric tree of all the music that has ever been made. I'll leave that one to you. I'll publish Metador, the web app, right? This thing. For some of you who are maybe on the stream more recently, maybe you haven't seen this, but yeah, this is Metador. So Metador, I don't know if I like how it sounds, but the idea is that it's metric trees, but it also kind of looks like the beginning of meter, right? So you might pronounce it meter, but it's going to be spelled like this because it's like metric trees. But this will be a public web app eventually, where you can do this, because I coded it myself and I like making stuff open source. So you can right now, you know, it's not that easy to use. You have to like do some sort of thing where you're like, so here you would just get one because there's only one thing, but you could give it some children, and then now it's a 3 that splits into 1s. And then you could give each of those, you could give each one of those, you could give each one of those some children, like this. And this would arguably be like a default 3-4 metric tree, right? Although since you can assume subdivision of 2, you know, arguably this is all you need for a 3-4, for a basic 3-4. But then, you know, if you had 3-4 and it was like subdivided in 3, you know, then you would probably write it like this. And you could also call that 9-8. So anyway, this will be public, and I'll like make a UI for it and all that. Eventually. What time signatures mean for meters that have not only 85 more ways. So you are willing to figure out one of them. Or are you just, yeah, the previously 667 of Sungazer. I guess, how are they? I don't know. The idea is that there's also a layer like within the 6s and the 7s. Like the 6s are like either 2 3s or 3 2s, and then the 7s might be 3 2 2 or 2 3 2 or 2 2 3. Been codified.
The log base 2 rule.
So our rhythmic system in the modern day is dyadic.
It is very dyadic.
It is base 2 to the...
Oh, and by the way, irrational time signatures, I want to stop calling them that. I want to call them non-dyadic time signatures, which I think sounds even fancier and is way more accurate. Irrational numbers have nothing to do with non-dyadic time signatures. The fact that they are non-dyadic is what they're about, so we should just call them non-dyadic time signatures. That's my soapbox on that.
When we talk about note values, by default we have the whole note, and then
that is, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, time signatures where the bottom number isn't a power of 2, which are very uncommon, but they are useful for some things. And we were actually looking at an example of that in FL Studio here. This is like 4 bars of 4/4. I mean, we don't need 4 of them. Just like 2 bars of 4/4 followed by a measure of 5/6. Again, like I mentioned in the video, 6th notes are quarter note triplets. And so it's like, the idea is like, oh, if I just have 5 quarter note triplets and then I reset back to the bar line, then that's a 5/6 measure. And that's what it would feel like.
you have the half note, quarter note, 8th note, 16th.
Yeah, it's probably true. Probably true.
8th note. These are powers of 2.
There are like many
when we
shorts
have a
to
note
make.
duration that isn't a power of 2, it almost
Also, welcome
sounds
back, question
wrong.
mark?
In fact, it does very much sound wrong. It sounds
Oh
like
yeah, and I was talking. So void form. Hey, let's shout out the Zen Rhythm server. So okay, I don't have Discord open because I'm live streaming, but there's a Discord server. Void form. If you send the link, it might suppress you, but then I think maybe I can override the suppression. But you know what I can also do is I can just link the wiki. And that's really the important thing, right? So void form in this chat has been curating this thing called the Zen Rhythm wiki, kind of to go alongside the Zen harmonic wiki. And so big props to him for that. And I've helped out with it a little bit here and there. Mostly I helped out on the page about my ideas of complex numbered time signatures. But I also was talking to him the other day about in the public Discord server for this thing, by the way, I was talking to him about like naming non-dyadic time signatures non-dyadic instead of irrational, and being like, you know, they're not common enough. Like, we can do this. Like, we can switch it to non-dyadic. I believe in us. So I think so. Then the wiki looks like this, and I think if you look up non-dyadic, so we decided to just name them that. And of course, we reference that they're called irrational, but it's like, yeah, they shouldn't be called that. They should be called non-dyadic. Anyway, fun times.
It's not even a thing.
Yeah, well, it's fandom.com, which is this kind of like site where you can make wikis. So the UI is kind of all from fandom.com. That we didn't have to make that, or void form. I'm saying we as if I had like any appreciable portion of the contribution. It's like 90% void form.
To talk about something like a 6th note.
There's no such thing as a 6th note.
But of course, you can have a note.
Oh my god, that video that I just clipped, there's no such thing as a 6th note. That video is still my most viewed video. Here's hoping that this one can pass it. It might eventually. At the rate that it's going. but that video is still my most viewed video, and it's so bad. It's terrible. I don't know what I'm talking about in it, and I end up being like, oh, well, I'm gonna make music in 1415, but then I just make music in 1516, and I call it like 3.754, which is like, yeah, that's fine, I guess, but it's just 1516. It's not that crazy. It's 1/6 of a whole note. We just don't call it a sixth note. We call it a quarter note triplet. Oh, here's the tuplet info dump. This I was considering, doing a whole section about this at some point in the video, but I did not. I did not end up doing that. Would a compound time signature of two smaller irrational time signatures make sense? I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, you could have a compound time signature. I mean, the thing is that you probably just... Okay. Compound time signatures are considered to be... Or like compound meters, right? Or yeah, compound time signatures are considered to be time signatures where the dotted quarter note gets the beat, or like some sort of dotted note gets the beat instead of a non-dotted note. So instead of a quarter note getting the beat, a dotted quarter note would get the beat. That's like 6/8, 9/8, 12/8 classically. In classical music, in classical music theory, that's what you would say, right? Compound meter. With irrational time signature, sorry, with non-dyadic time signatures, I'm pretty sure you just wouldn't need to, you just wouldn't need to because you're already using tuplets. And so at that point, just use more tuplets. Like, why would you bother with using dotted notes? And like thinking about the dotted notes as a pulse. Yeah. So probably not. Like, you could do it in notation, I guess, but I just don't think it would be that useful. Yeah. Dyadic irrational time signatures when square root of 2 over 8. or like square root of 2 over 6, Give me root 2 sixth notes.
Okay, so a logarithm
then that's like actually an irrational time signature in both senses.
Inverse exponent. So if you raise 10 to the second power,
logarithm
10 to the power
math
of 2 of 8,
I'm gonna skip
how
through
about
this.
6/8? Subdivide into 2. So that could be expressed.
Oh, right. So yeah, this is kind of like important when you're going from time signature to metric tree, right? And it's also important when you're looking at a metric tree and computing the time signature, because you basically want to compute the simplest time signature possible, and that assumes that duplet subdivision is default. So basically, duplet subdivision can be essentially ignored. So if you had a time signature like this, right? If you had a time signature like this, or if you had a metric tree like this, right? And you're like, okay, how do we compute the time signature using the log base 2 rule here? Well, this looks like it actually has 2 layers of subdivision, or 2 layers of division. So, this arguably should be an over 8. That's kind of interesting, right? So arguably, these ones are actually a subdivision of the beats, right? Because you have the meter, and then you have the pulse, and then you have a division, a subdivision of the pulse. So then that would suggest that we're doing 8s. However, it's 2s, and 2s kind of just don't count. They're like the default. And so you actually wouldn't count this as 6 things. You would count it as 3 things, and then you would do that. Now, on the other hand, right, if you then say within these, there are actually like a triplet subdivision, for instance. Or, okay, actually first, let's look at like, what if within these you also have duplet subdivision again, right? Well, actually, no, this is still just 3/4. This is still just 3/4 because the 2s all cancel out. However, if I were to go in here and add something like this, this maybe is 3/4, but this is this is now getting a little bit more questionable. Probably still call this 3/4 because it's 3 beats and they're subdivided into 2s, but then those are subdivided into 3s. Now we're getting into an interesting place. Again, though, this typically is not what the log-base-2 rule is going to be helping you with. The log-base-2 rule is going to be more like when you have something like or I don't know, something like this, right? Right. This is where the log-base-2 rule might help you out, where it's like, okay, so maybe that's what's going on. Where we essentially have like a here, although I think a 6/6. Oh, hello. Am I crashing? Am I crashing? Please don't crash the stream. Okay. Anyway, essentially I have 9 there, which I think that works actually. So that would make this technically 3rd layer subdivisions because 9 is in the 2 to the 3 range. 2 to the 3 is 8, so 9 is greater than that. Less than the next power of 2. This is a weird one. Yeah, I guess this would be like a kind of 7 with triplet subdivision, right? But we're also arguing that it's actually 2, 2, 3. So there's like multiple layers of subdivision. Multiple layers of subdivision actually can be difficult, but yes. Yeah, I think we dropped out for a second there, but I think we're back. So anyway, let's continue. So with a simpler time signature, well, there's only 2 ways to group 6 subdivisions. Yeah, this was decent. You can do 2, 2, 2, or you can do 3, 3. Well, 2, 2, 2 is already taken by a simpler time signature. Yeah, for exactly. A set of groupings to be at a certain layer of subdivision, the largest... Does anybody have questions about this? Because otherwise I just want to skip it, to be honest. Like this part I covered in the video fine. 3, so that would be in the 2 to the 2 range, and that's the biggest one. And so there is less than a factor of 2 difference between the largest and smallest groups, which means 4, 4, 4, 3 is a valid second. I mean, again, that factor of 2 difference thing that I'm saying, again, I'm not making that up as a rule. I'm saying that I think this is an accurate description of how we usually think about this stuff. And how we feel divisions in fact, which is to say that like basically I think that we never really feel like one pulse is half as long as another pulse in the sense of like bobbing your head with least effort. Like you're never going to bob your head with least effort where one of the head bobs is twice as fast as one of the other head bobs. Maybe you will. You could prove me wrong about that. That is an experiment that you could run, I guess, maybe potentially. You could certainly say, hey, you know, I have this here's this song and I bob my head like 1 2 1 2 1 1 2 1 2 1 1 2 1 2 1 1 2 1 2 1 1 2 1 2 1 1 2 1 2. Maybe you do that. But it gets absurd at a certain point, right? Like certainly if you go much past that ratio, like then it's just ridiculous, right? Like if you're doing like a 1 3, like you're not gonna bob your head like 1 2, like that's not the pulse. That you're like doing a rhythm within the pulse if you're doing that, right? Layer subdivision scheme. So another thing you could not have, for instance, is a layer that goes 2 2 2 1. Yeah, you could have 2 2 3, but this one is half. We get a pretty good bang for our buck here. I think this system describes a lot of time signatures. All do with 1516 is group it as 5 triplets. 3 3 3 3 3 would be a first layer subdivision grouping, since the largest is obviously 3 and 3 is a layer 1 division. This judgment is in fact very precedented with the classical notion of 6 8 9 8 and 12 8 being 2 3 4. So naturally, if you had 5 triplets, and you can't see it would be 15 8. Yes. This also has the implication that the does she know breakdown could be called 21 8 because it's 7 3s. That seems a little out there, But honestly, I'm kind of fine with it. Like, yes, you're probably going to need to specify that it is 7/4 in triplets, but you kind of have to do that anyway, right? Like, you even do that with 12/8 a lot of the time. Now, another really nice thing. Yeah, it's true. It's true. People will bring up 12/8, and like, usually when you say that something is in 12/8, you're also going to say, yeah, it's like 4 in triplets, right? Like, usually you end up clarifying yourself anyway. For us is that there is a big difference between odd time signatures with regular versus irregular pulses. Now, I think it's worth noting that, oh yeah, like we talked about earlier, the details of the meter, it's a does she know breakdown, a does she know like we talked about earlier, the details of the meter itself can be subjective. Wait, maybe I can just find it in the edit. Oh, well, that won't work. Whatever. It's very easy to fit like a 7/8 groove over a 7/4 groove to have them both be playing, and your ear might latch onto either. But what I'm saying is that in this case, there's two very different feels that you can hear in the same piece of music, but they are still different feels.
6, 7, 1, 2, 3.
Does She Know is definitely the main odd time tune on chamber music. It goes through a bunch of odd time signatures, and it Fun fact, because FL Studio considers the quarter note all the time to be the click, and 9/8 in the isochronal, like same size beat, regular pulse type of feel, the dotted quarter note gets a beat. I actually did in the DAW have 3/4 for this 9/8 section so that the click would stay the same speed. And then I just, used triplets within that. So in the DAW, this section is in 3/4, but conceptually it's 9/8. And actually, well, it goes, but it like kind of does both. In fact, arguably, it more so does the odd feel of 9/8 as short, long, 2, 2, 2, 3. Truly modulates from one to the next and all that, but it's really danceable, and not just if you're from the Balkans. It is, because while I change up the subdivision and the groupings, people of dance the pulse to it at my show. The pulse is actually a totally consistent 165. I don't have a video of the audience, but yeah. Contrast this to, for instance, the opener track on the album, Natalie Has Never Tasted Anything Other Than Mustard, which is in some kind of 11, probably 11/16. Yeah, I say 11/16 there. I actually probably think of it more so as 22/16, if I'm going to call it something. I think the project is just 11/8, which is mathematically the same as 22/16. But, yeah, the project is just 11/8, but like if I was to use this concept of the log-base 2 rule, be 22/16, and I like that. I think that's actually pretty accurate. Again, it doesn't tell you all the details, but that's not the point. Like you can't get all the details from a time signature when things get complex enough, and that's why I think like adding another number to the time signature is kind of like moot point, because it's like, the only way that you're really going to be able to do that is by doing like the nested time signature thing, but then that gets ridiculous. So you just have to communicate stuff in other ways when it gets sufficiently like this. This has irregular pulses. It's an uneven, and I would argue that it's also specifically like 2 2 3 2 2 2 2 3 2 2, right? Even beat. To me, this is almost like an entirely different world of meter. Like, this is as different from an odd meter with a regular pulse as a regular pulse odd meter is from 4/4. And the log-base 2 rule really spells that out. It gives us this solid analytical foundation for what we kind of already all know is the difference between stuff over 4 and stuff over 8 and stuff over... Yep, this is true. And I feel like some people in the comment section didn't read this part of the video. 16. Now, where does it fail? Because the system, while it is very powerful, but yeah, I mean, admittedly, most people are going to think most of the time about the canonical time signatures. 6/8, 12/8, 4/4, 3/4 cut time, those kind of things. And so the log-base 2 rule can seem kind of ridiculous when you apply it to those, but I just don't really mean it to apply to those because they have a bunch of stuff wrapped up in them already. And I am very happy with it. It isn't perfect. There are some places where it fails. Basically anything over 2. Basically anything over 2. Like something to tell you where the beats are. Yeah, beaming. Somebody commented that I should have talked about beaming more often. And I was like, yeah, I mean, beaming is very important when you're looking at notation, but my focus isn't really in notation. Like, I have to address notation, but, the focus of the log-base 2 rule is not for notation. The focus of it is for the concept the concept of like, this is a time signature and I'm going to have vocabulary. I'm going to describe something as feeling like this time signature. And, you know, there's something that groups together a bunch of different feels. Like there's a certain quality to a feel that makes it like a 13/16. And that's something that I care about. And that's what I'm trying to spell out. And, but yeah, I mean, in notation, beaming is huge. Beaming is very important. I remember like actually when I was composing like classical-ish music, you know, in high school for my orchestra, I remember my orchestra director, because I probably showed him like 8 or 9 scores over the years, and we only played 2 of them, one in my freshman year and then on artificial intelligence in my senior year, which we showed earlier. But we sight read a bunch of different pieces that I wrote. I wrote quite a few pieces actually. And, you know, one of the things I remember him telling me about it at some point was like, hey, you need to be more conscious of the beaming. Like you want to like show the beats of the music in the beaming and in the ties and stuff. So like, instead of using a quarter note that is on an offbeat, you might want to use 2/8 notes that are tied together and beamed away from each other, so that the kind of beat is visible to the reader, and that turns out to be very crucial when you're engraving music. Right. Like, you don't really need it when you're in notation, but when we're talking about time signatures outside of notation, which people do, even if you don't, people do, I know many people who do, I think this system works really well. However, if you want to talk about a cut time feel, yeah, this doesn't really make sense, right? Because in a cut time feel, you do have 2 beats. I'm much more interested in the over 8s and the over 16s and the over 32s. The other place where this fails, and this one is a little bit more interesting, is extreme tempo. Here's a groove. What time signature do you think this is in? I would call this 6/8. And I think most people would call this 6/8. It's a slow 6/8. Like, that's what this is. If I tell a drummer, or if I'm drumming and someone tells me, play a slow 6/8, this is basically what is going to be played. Now, this is so slow that based on the traditional notion of 6/8 being a 2-beat feel with a triplet subdivision, it just doesn't actually work anymore, right? Like, there's no way that you're actually feeling 2 beats in this cycle. You really are feeling 6 beats, but the structure of this beat, or the vocabulary being used, the kick drum, 2 hi-hats, snare drum, 2 hi-hats, that is quintessential 6/8. I'd like to call this something like conceptual inertia. The idea being that when you have a structure that is really quintessentially a certain concept, you have this beat, which is really quintessentially 6/8. Oh yeah, for sure. No, you are welcome to be that guy. Okay, additive measures with non-dyadic time signatures. I see. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could do that, I guess. I don't know. Well, okay, I guess there's several ideas there, right? So one idea is that you kind of have like an irrational time signature that would simplify as a fraction to a non-irrational, or I should say, you have a non-dyadic time signature that would simplify to a dyadic time signature, but you have it be additive. So you say like, you thinking like, oh, I don't know, like, yeah, like, well, actually, could you do that? Like 2 + 4 over 6 or something. Yeah, or like 1 + 2 over 3. Something like that, maybe. But then you can also just have one that doesn't simplify to a dyadic time signature. And I guess in that case, here we can pull out the Muse score. Oh, okay, or not. Okay. Yeah, so like we're thinking like 3 + 4 over 6 or something, right? Like, is this kind of what you're thinking about? Yeah, in that case, like, yeah, I mean, you can certainly do that, and that might be useful. The thing with non-dyadic time signatures is just that they don't really mean much on their own. And the reason why they don't mean much on their own is not because there's some sort of like universal intrinsic truth to like base 2. It's just because in our rhythmic notation, like regardless of time signatures, in our rhythmic notation that is based on these values, it just is a dyadic system, which means if you're going to use an irrational time signature, you will have to use tuplets. Like an irrational time signature, I keep calling it that. Old habits die hard. A non-dyadic time signature doesn't make you, that's not the same thing as going into like base 3. Like the base 3 idea that I explore, that's different from a non-dyadic time signature. Non-dyadic time signatures don't take you there, which means you always have to use tuplets anyway, which means if you're going to have a whole piece in that thing, then you could write exactly the same thing with exactly the same implications about the pulse and the subdivisions, but with less ink and less tuplets. And so like there's just never really a good reason to write a whole piece in that. So like absolutely you could do this. And that this suggests that you're going to play 7 quarter note triplets and that they're going to be grouped as 3+4. And that's, yeah, that's legit. You can totally do that. Yeah. Literally Feel ripoff. Feel by Jacob Collier and Leon Lahavas invented slow 6/8, guys. It's actually been Feel the whole time. Astronaut Ohio meme. Yeah. Even if you speed it up or slow it down such that the pulse that you feel or what if we
changes,
we should do like
that structure is just so 6/8 that you're just going to add a qualifier onto it instead of calling it something else. So we're not going to change to calling it 6/4. We're just going to call it slow 6/8. This also occurs on the other end, of course, when things get fast. There's countless examples of pieces that are...
I always forget that you go to the A minor chord first, and then you go to the B flat last in the best part progression. I always, when I haven't played it in a long time and then I go back to play it, I always end up playing it like... And then I'm like, wait, no, that's not right. And then I'm like, oh yeah. Anyway,
written in 3/4, thought of in 3/4.
Harmony. What am I doing? Talking about harmony.
But that are so fast you're really feeling 1 beat per measure, or double time swing. You're not feeling the pulse. You're not dancing to.
I would have just recorded myself playing double time swing, but I was super rushing to try to finish the video Friday night or like Friday afternoon. and I was just like, nope, I'm clipping some other person's video. And yeah, but I think it's fine. This is like cleaner double time swing than I would have done anyway.
The 260 BPM pulse. You're dancing to half of that, right? And so in these cases of extreme tempo,
you bob your head 2 beats to the slow 6/8. Well, I mean that's impressive.
But
I really, hang on.
6/8, it's a slow 6/8. Like that's what this is. If I tell a drummer, or if I'm drumming and someone tells me
that is
play a
really
slow 6/8. This is basic.
Like okay, at least for me, like I have to intentionally do that. I have to intentionally be moving my head slowly to do that. Like naturally, I'm gonna go like this.
Now this is
like this
so
is
slow
this is the lowest
that
energy
based
state.
on the traditional notion of
this is the lowest energy state. Like. Like, yeah, I mean, if you bob your head there, then that's great. That's great.
6/8 being a 2-beat feel with a triplet subdivision, it just doesn't actually work anymore, right? Like, there's no way that you're actually feeling 2 beats in this cycle.
Yeah, Video Andy thinks there's no way that's true. DU67TY. No idea how to pronounce that. But anyway. You have proven me wrong, I suppose. But I think most people would probably bob their head with 6 beats there.
You really are feeling 6 beats. But the structure of the to the 200.
Yeah, anyway,
we got to put some numbers in here that don't belong.
This section almost did not happen because I extended the video deadline by 18 hours when I realized I couldn't get it premiering Friday night. And I was ready to cut it But because I gave myself that extension, I was able to get this section in. So I did this whole thing in that, like, over Friday night, essentially. Like Franco said, perfection is subdivided. And then, yeah, so this is the lick in 8/9 in bass 3, dividing in 3. Now, I've just established this very mathematical bass 2 system, so what if bass 3? We have quite a few choices before us here. If you've seen my stuff on complex numbered time signatures, you may be familiar with this kind of thing where we generalize a music theory concept. The only rule here is that whatever extensions to the system that we make, they just need to simplify to the correct thing in the established existing system. So we're basically trying to expand the idea of notation to account for, I mean, I guess in principle, any bass, whereas our current system is only in bass 2. But whatever we come up with, whatever kind of rules and systems and structures, it needs to simplify to the correct stuff for bass 2. So here's the premise. A whole note is still a whole note, but this is no longer a half note. It's a third note. I love this idea so much, man. And it's so cool because I have been thinking about the bass 2 idea for like at least a year, like a long time, like relative to like when I actually started working on the video. And I did not know about the history of notation. I did not know about the like perfect, imperfect stuff until much later. And so I already had the idea of like, what if I did a segment about like bass 3 music in a video? That would be funny. Like I already had that idea like many, many months ago before I knew anything about mensural notation. So like it was so cool to like realize that this was basically harkening back to like the original way that most notes were. Like, yeah, this is no longer a quarter note, but a ninth note, and this is a 27th. Now, of course, in Franco of Cologne's treatise, like the whole note up here at the top, this was the shortest one, so we would not have had this. Like this was not a simulation of history. I almost put that in the script, but I ended up cutting it from the video. I did put it in the script and I did film it, but then I cut it in the edit. But anyway, like it's not a simulation of history. It's saying we have this system. What if we like change the number? No, this isn't. Metric trees in complex bases. In complex bases? Oh my god. I don't even know what that would mean. But that does sound like the logical conclusion of all of this, right? With my, because I did complex numbered time signatures, and now I've done bass 3 time signatures. Oh. I mean, first I'm going to do a deeper dive on bass 3 because I actually have a lot more to say about bass 3 and a lot of other ideas that I didn't get in here. 81st note, the real world 9/8. Yeah, and you'd probably never use anything shorter than an 81st note. I mean, you might not even use anything shorter than a 27th note, right? Because we very rarely use 32nd notes even. Or like, I don't know, 32nd notes are super rare, but like 64th notes are extremely rare. And like 27th notes are basically about the same size as 32nd notes, right? So yeah, you would only have these 4 symbols pretty much for most stuff, which is why it's not our actual system, because it's not as good. Would probably be the simplest and most common time signature if this is really how we did things, and we'd probably just call it 3/3. I love this, right? Isn't this great? 3/3. If we wanted to express a 4 count feel with duplet subdivision, like again, this is 4/4, even though it looks like it's got like a bunch of layers to it, the 2s cancel out, or they don't count towards the layers that build up that bottom number. 4/4, right? But in bass 3, we would probably have to take the same kind of approach as what 9/8 does in the real world. And this leads us to our first kind of choice in this process. What do dotted notes mean in a bass 3? Somebody commented that the background music was like terrible and distracting to them, and I imagine they just don't like it, which is fine. That's valid. But I wonder which one they were talking about, and I wonder if it was maybe this one, because I could maybe see it. I'm fine with it, but that is like those chords kind of jump out at you a little bit, and maybe it's distracting.
System. Now this is really interesting because the dot of dotted notes historically comes from marking perfection. Like it's the same origin as the
69
mensuration
over
symbols.
420.
It marks that a note should be subdivided in 3. Here,
Oh boy.
a dot is, you know,
The thing is, like, oh, I don't even know, like, how you would, because again, it's the base. It's not like the time signature. And the base is just like this kind of abstract idea about how the notes get divided. So in base 69 in base 69 over 420, the whole note would be a whole note, and then the half note would turn into a longer division because the base is fractional. And it would be, so it'd be 69 over 420 to the power of -1, which is actually just 420 over 69. So what looks like a half note would be a 420/69ths note in base 69 over 420. And then what looks like a quarter note would be what looks like a quarter note would be a 176,400 4,761st note. That would be what looks like a quarter note to us, usually, in base 69 over 420. This is the beautiful thing about having a mathematical system for things, is that you can just freaking plug in whatever numbers you want. With the complex numbers, then it becomes like very confusing. Well, I guess not really, because actually it does basically work probably maybe with the way that I already have, because I already have the concept for complex number time signatures. So maybe you could get that working somehow.
Potentially going to be doing the opposite of that, I guess, because all of our notes are already subdivided in 3 by default. So if we're going to change them with a dot, then they're going to be something else, unless we just say that a dot always means
Ron Jarzambek and a headache and a 64th. Interesting. I assume that's a piece of music. Oh, I see. So it's like 1/64th note off each measure. So it's just slightly, yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's interesting because it very much feels like it's actually in triplets of some kind and not 64th notes. But I guess maybe, the 64th notes are like underneath that, I assume. Like this is... Right. Which I would probably guess I would probably call them like 16th note triplets. Well, or just 8th note triplets, honestly, if this is the pulse. It's the fast pulse. That's how I'm bobbing my head, right? Yeah, it goes hard. Oh, little met mod. Yeah, that's fun. I like that. Subdivided in 3, and so if you're in base 3, a dot does nothing, but I don't think we're going to do that. We could say that dot... Yeah, well, Fizz actually already kind of almost sort of did that, right? With the oh, I wonder if I still have the project for it. Hang on. Do I still have the project for it? No, I don't think I do. No. I did at one point break down the metric modulation in Fever Sleep, which is really cool. Here, let me play that shit for y'all. Very cool little thing. Fever Sleep, one of my favorite songs. Period right now. So we're in this just like little swung, but like, or actually no, we're not really. I'm invoking swing, aren't I? Because I know it's coming. So then like it skips one. It kind of starts subdividing and now we're 50% faster. So it metrically modulates with a 3-to-2 ratio, and so the triplets become the regular divisions, right? Like triplets become eighth notes type thing. But it shifts the like clap sound forward 1/16th note triplet. Like, well, it's a 16th note triplet in the initial tempo. It's just a 16th note in the following tempo, right? But it's like shifted one early halfway through, and it's kind of masked in there. And I did not execute it properly verbally. But anyway, yeah, it just like kind of makes stuff line up in the end. It's very fun. So just one note, and it's not a 64th note, but they did do like a little like shift. But still just always add 50% to the duration, and you know, that's valid. That does simplify correctly, but that's kind of lame. Yeah, that would be obviously lame, right? The most intuitive and reasonable thing to do here is to say that a dotted note means you add one more subdivision. It almost looks like you're doing that as well, like visually with the dot. It's like one little extra note. So in that case, a dotted third note would be 4 ninth notes long instead of 3 ninth notes long. Now, using this logic, we could say that 4/4 perhaps becomes 16/9. Where I thought about this for a while, so there were a lot of different options. I think 69 ends up making the most sense, and not just because it's, you know, close to the meme, but I thought about 8/9 and I thought about 16/27, but for kind of the reasons that I lay out here, like 16/9 I think works the best. 8/9 would be, you know, fine if like kind of all you want to do is do like that duplet subdivision, but then it would be more annoying for the quadruplet subdivision of 4, and I feel like the quadruplet subdivision of 4/4 is very important most of the time. So I don't know, I went with 16/9, but there are several different things, and like it's the same kind of thing where like in our actual like base 2 system, like if you want to represent layers of triplet subdivision, it gets tricky. Like 9/8 is a nice way to do like 2 layers where you have like 3 beats and they're each 3, so you have 3 3s. That's nice. So instead of 4 4s, you have 3 3s. But if you want to go triplets within that, you still have to use tuplets. And in order to do that number of layers, you would have to do something like 27/16, right? And so at that point, it gets like kind of ridiculous, right? A dotted third note, which is 4 ninth notes, gets the beat. But yeah, so this is like your pulse of 4 beats. For that duple subdivision, you would have to tie 2 ninth notes together, but for the quadruplet subdivision, for playing like the equivalent of our real world 16th notes, I guess, you know, you would just play ninth notes. Now we could also invent like a minus sign to take away one of the subdivisions. This is completely unnecessary in a base 2 system, because when you take one subdivision away from a duply subdivided note, it just becomes its subdivision. So there's just no point. But in any higher base, there is going to be use for that. So if we added a minus sign to mean taking away one subdivision, then we could have our quadruplet, our duplet, and our pulse in the real world 4/4, but it would be written as 16/9 in this base 3 system. Tuplets would also be completely different. You would probably use a lot of tuplets to express things with... Yeah, so tuplets in this system would be, you know, for any note whose value isn't a multiple of a power of 3, in the way that tuplets in our actual system are used for any note value that is not a multiple of a power of 2. Now this was in the tuplet info dump. We also use tuplets sometimes for things that are multiples of powers of 2, but we don't have to because we can always use dotted notes for those if we choose. But sometimes you will see duplets, for instance, in like a 6/8, where you go right, and you might see those like you might see those notated as duplets. I don't know why I went for that song in particular. It's just like the, I don't know, classic 6/8, right? Duplets and quadruplets and octuplets. And I actually don't remember. I think it's Irish Washerwoman, right? Right, because Greensleeves is the one that's like dun 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 dun. That's Greensleeves, I think. And then that's, I think, Irish Washerwoman. I'm like 80% confident about that. I know one of them is one of them and the other is the other. It's because quarter, eighth, 16th notes, they don't exist on their own anymore. Yeah, so this is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. An actual 16th note in this system would be called a 9th note sextuplets. Oh my god. And then, of course, even like I'm like zooming in on this and like going across, panning across it, but it's a typo. I just didn't realize. I have a feeling I'll come back to this. And I probably
now in
will.
our
I
actual
probably will
system,
go more into that
which
later.
is base 2, you know, are time signatures bad? Like, do they need an overhaul? Do we need to change them? I don't think so. I think they're actually...
Background music is "Tell Me No Now," which is like the complicated notation example that showed you why. Where it was like, oh, did you realize this was 7/8? This measure? That was this song.
Actually fine. I will admit that they get awkward in software
Not this part of the
sometimes.
song.
So check this out. On Soundbrenner, if I
This
set it
part,
to
actually.
130 BPM and I change the time signature from 4/4 to 4/8,
Oh, and I should say, like, I did film a moment of saying this, but I just cut it because it was not necessary, really. But Tell Me No does not actually have a bar of 7/8 in it. Like, Tell Me No is just in 4/4. I just altered the notation to make that musical example. But
don't get any difference in the speed of the click. But in FL...
Oh, goodbye, Void Form. You might have already left, but goodbye. And yeah, everybody go check out the Zen Rhythm Wiki. It's really cool.
Studio, if I did the same thing, I would get a difference. And this is because FL Studio treats the tempo as the quarter note, whereas Soundbrenner is actually targeting beats per minute in the sense that the top number of the time signature is the number of beats. You know, sometimes in a DAW, I'm just going to ignore...
Look at this shit. FL Studio doesn't let you have a numerator more than 16. Isn't that ridiculous?
Or the DAW's metronome and make my own clip.
But this is literally what you got to do if you want to do something in 19 in FL or anything greater than 16. You want to do it in 17, you want to whatever. You got to do this. I mean, you could also just kind of ignore the grid entirely, but like you probably want some sort of visual reference for where the bars are
and where the cycle is. That's just how it goes. And sometimes, if a metric field is really complicated, you know, you're just going to need to tell people
It's me.
something.
I'm
you're just going to
MS.
need to communicate more. But, you know, in those cases,
And now,
how do we do that?
Great question.
this was so funny. So, I did not actually ask Adam to interview. I just asked him, like, hey, does Sungazer like communicate with Western notation? And he was like, oh, that's a like whole rabbit hole. Why don't we hop on a Zoom call about it? And I was like, okay then. And yeah, so that was super cool. And there's a bunch of cool stuff in this
I
interview now.
found an email that I sent to Jared Yee before we recorded Perihelion, basically like trying to communicate some of the things that we were talking about.
There was a person who commented on the video. They were like, using Adam's name is just clickbait. And I don't know. I'm very curious what they meant by that. I'm very curious how this video is not actually featuring Adam Neely. This is Adam Neely, whom you've probably seen before if you're this deep into a YouTube video about time signatures, but just in case, he's a I don't mention it until this point in the video because I wanted it to be a surprise. But, like during the premiere, I wanted it to be a surprise, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. He's actually here. So I have a feeling that commenter just didn't watch the whole video, but that's, Don't do that. Don't leave critical comments when you have not actually watched the video. Pro tip. Bassist and nerd, and one half of the progressive jazz fusion group Sungazer, along with Sean Crowder. Sungazer partakes in many an odd meter. I don't know why the audio quality is so bad here, but oh well. That's cool shit. But they also tour and record with other musicians, like Jared Yee. So they have this challenge of communicating their pretty complex stuff with other musicians.
A lot of the music we think about, legitimately, it's in 4/4, but subdivided into tuplets. That is the concept behind a lot of our music, because it's organized that way. The backbeat is on what would be 2 and 4.
Yeah, that big snare drum, right? So like threshold is probably the slowest thing, right? I mean, yeah, that's the whole point of it. But they still have like kick, snare at 33 BPM. So
in a measure of 4/4, but then chopped up in all of these unusual ways. We originally communicated this stuff to Jared Yee, who wasn't as indoctrinated into the cult of tuplets as we are. Here are the tunes for Monday. I don't have a lot in the way of the charts. Lunar was not particularly complicated. Cytherian is really just, it's, again, the way that we're thinking of it is it's in 4/4, but in Cytherian we were thinking of it subdivided into subtuplets.
Man, so one of the things is that I interviewed Adam like more than a month. No, wait. I interviewed Adam like a few weeks ago. Like it was a few weeks ago. So well before the video, but like not like months and months. But anyway, you know, part of the thing is that like when you interview someone, you don't want to like misrepresent them, but you still need to like cut the interview down. So it's, you know, it's like courteous to like pass it by them, right? And like not everybody does this, and to be honest, I don't actually know what this looks like most of the time. It's not like I'm getting interviewed by news outlets all the time or something, but I shouldn't say that as if I know that that's a fact in the industry or something. I'm just saying I thought it would be courteous, and I figure anytime I interview somebody, I'm going to do this, is basically give them like the edit of their interview as early as possible, so that, you know, if they feel like you like misrepresented some of their views, then you can get feedback on that earlier rather than later. So I edited the Adam Neely interview part of this video first, well before I did anything else, and I edited it, you know, weeks before everything else. And so I had made, and it took some time, I had made like a text animation, or like a text thing where it was like the numbers 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, like 4 lines of those numbers popping up on screen with the click, and that was going to be like how that worked. Yeah, and then when it came to like editing the majority of the video, I was like, oh, I have to do the metric tree actually. So that whole animation was a waste of time, because I just ended up doing the metric tree. And it's very easy to do the metric tree because you just have to find the tempo and then plug in the numbers and then screen record it, and boom, easy. The audio quality is
the way I said is like, I want you to think of it as 3/4-ish, and the actual chart I wrote out for him, I wrote out what it is, which it's not even what I just said. I wrote it out actually in 7/16.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Instead of in 4/4. And then what it kind of feels like. What I wanted him to interpret the music was the bottom one. What it is a little bit more mathematically precise with how Sean at least was interpreting where every attack lines up in septuplets. And we've tried it both ways, where we write it all out in 4/4, and then in the music we have all the subdivisions as represented by tuplets using Western notation. And it is significantly easier just to communicate with other musicians by having a time signature of 7/16, and then we just interpret the full bar as a beat. That kind of worked. It did work.
Yeah, the
like
Winter
it
Village
got the
in the
point
background
across,
of this video,
and that's and then when in the recording.
It was also funny because I interviewed him before his Ethics of Fake Guitar video came out, and so like when the Ethics of Fake Guitar video came out, I was like, oh, that's the same place that he was when I interviewed him, and I don't know, but I can only assume that like that's his house now or something. And so I'm like, oh, like I guess he moved and and so I saw that in, you know, when I interviewed him. But I definitely, like, he had posted a story where he was like, oh, we're gonna have a special guest for a video or something, and that ended up being foreshadowing his girlfriend, his like philosopher PhD girlfriend, because of course. But I didn't realize that was his house, or like, I guess we still don't technically know if that's true or not, but I just assumed that. But yeah, I was like, oh wait, that's the plant. Like, he has a shot on that same couch where he's sitting and interviewing me, or being interviewed by me here. I was like, yeah, yo.
Session when we were with Jared, he kind of heard, because Sean tracked the drums first, and he kind of heard what it was, and then he was just interpreting it like it was 3/4, but just.
Yeah, the idea of interpreting this as 3/4 is kind of interesting. I can't really bring myself to do it, to be honest, when I listen to it, because I just hear the like kick and snare pattern, and I'm like, yeah, it's in 4/4 in septuplets. But I also I'm the type of person who is in more of like Sean Crowder's position a lot of the time, where I'm like drumming a pattern like that. So I guess maybe if I was a saxophone player, I could feel it in 3/4.
There's a little bit of a delay. Like if you see on the 5th measure on the top, there's a 16th note syncopation off the beat, and then there's like this anticipation. But the way that I kind of wanted him to interpret it was almost as if it was in 3/4. It kind of like all works out. You know, we've done that with a bunch of different tunes for him. There's the tune Perihelion off of that first record, which is a similar one. This one, I just wrote it out in 4/4, and then the melody was lay back a lot, etc., all that. And so
Perihelion is such a good tune. I really like that one.
So everything is this interpretation.
It's very Adam Neely and very Sungazer. It's like not like OG Sungazer very much, but it's like it's very Adam Neely, with like, you know, the octave pedal and the like saxophone textures and then all the subdivisions. It's like yeah, it's good.
Meaning we're trying to communicate the feeling of this other simpler time signature, even though it is this more complicated rhythmic scheme. That worked for the first record. However, for the second record, it ended up being significantly more fruitful to just write it out all properly, or at least write out as much as we could in Western notation what it is, and then we learned how to play it amongst ourselves. This is the tracking chart that we have for a tune off of the most recent record, which was Whiskey and Mace, which is based in quintuplets, more or less. And then we just wrote it all out in 5/16. Yeah. But it's by far the best way. I mean, we have these internal conversations all the time, like what it is versus what the musical impression is, or what the technical thing is if you're going to program it in Ableton Live.
Yeah, exactly, which I brought up kind of with FL Studio.
Versus what the audience is feeling, like what the pulse the audience is feeling, what we're feeling.
It was funny because in this interview, like there are several parts of the interview that I cut where Adam like said some stuff where I was like, yeah, like exactly, like he basically, it was like he was reading from my script basically. He didn't have my script, of course. He was just like talking about ideas, and I was like, oh yeah, like I have that in my script already. And that was very like affirming, but it was also kind of funny because I'm like, oh, like I guess if I didn't have that in my script already, maybe I would just include Adam saying that as the thing to say that. Like he for instance, he talked at some point in our interview about like you know, there's like different well, actually maybe that is in here where he talks about like, oh, for different purposes there's going to be, you know, different time signatures potentially for the same music.
They can be very different things depending on the circumstance.
Well, okay, yeah, I guess just literally that line. But I think there was maybe more to that I cut. Anyway.
Now, I also have some experience of my own communicating exceedingly odd time to others.
I didn't even realize, like, until I actually went back and looked at the score.
And also to myself. In college, I wrote this chart called
Yeah, so until I went back and found this score, searching through my emails, I didn't realize that I had basically done the same thing. for my like 17 feel in this song. Although I wrote it
titled Odd Time
in
Combo
7/8.
2. And
5/8,
there's a part of
5/8
it that is
instead of
in
over 16s.
17 as 7 plus 5 plus 5. And I didn't notate it in 17/16. Much like Sungazer, I notated each of those pulses as one measure. So in my case, I did 7/8, 5/8, 5/8. Today, maybe I would do that as 7/16, 5/16, 5/16. Transcribed that into
and then
a
Odd Holy
notation
Night, right?
of sorts so that I could play it on other instruments and record it on a myth, which has back to more notable on the top.
Yeah, so it's like this notation was really fun. So this is obviously just an FL Studio screenshot where I and you kind of read, like, there's 4 lines here. So you read it like left to right with like the G, C, G, D, G, and then you go over. So you read it left to right, and those like blue patterns are kind of what the like blue bars are what separates the lines. And yeah, so it's like I think I messed up. But anyway, yeah, half of the line and odd subdivision groupings on the bottom, and then 5s specifically were highlighted in red. I just kind of found that helpful. Going back to more notable people here, Matt Gartzka, one of my favorite drummers right now. He has this video where he breaks down Animals as Leaders track Monomyth, which has some pretty crazy metric stuff going on.
Instead, squeezing 3 notes
Pulse
in
morphing.
the span of 2,
Pulse morphing.
5 notes in the span of 3. Basically, you have, an 8 and an
here's
11
a big
there.
missed opportunity
So 8,
in the
11,
video.
11, 8, 8, 11, which comes to 57.
So he says, which comes to 57, and I was already, like, the video was mid-render, and it was, like, down to the wire, so I knew I couldn't do a second render. Like, the first render of this video was the last. It's what I uploaded. And you can see that because, I mean, this video file is called full v1. As it was rendering, I was like, oh, shoot, wait, isn't this video 57 minutes long? And Matt Garzka in the clip says it comes out to 57. Like, that would have been a great joke to make. But unfortunately, I just missed that. So, yeah, it's funny. It's still funny to me that he says it comes out to 57. Now, he then, I mean, you should go watch his video on Monomyth. It's cool. But he then also says something like, we actually ended up deciding to lop off one 16th note or something so that it was 56, so that it's more like a 7 feel with like a kind of big 7. But yeah, good. I mean, his video's like in the playlist as well, which I'll make public.
It's into a
after
ton
this.
of detail in that video, and I recommend you watch the whole thing, but he never quite talks about time signatures directly. Between you and Sean, do you guys talk about time, like, do you guys talk in terms of time signatures very often?
What it ends up being is mostly numbers, not time signatures. We can say, oh, 7, this thing is in 7, this thing is in 3, this thing's in 11, et cetera, et cetera. And then if we want to break down the subdivision of something, we say 2 plus 2 plus 3, or whatever the subdivision is. But it's very much like time signature based. Most of the rhythmic vocabulary for Sungazer is the idea of a time signature, but it doesn't change. It doesn't change throughout a composition, if that makes any sense. It's like, this is the core rhythmic feeling of the number.
Yeah, and I think what he means by that is he's talking about that, like, base tuplet. The base tuplet doesn't change, except for when it does, because, you know, sometimes he does pulse morphing or something. But yeah,
7
most
as
of the time,
applied
right?
to this composition. The initial question you asked was, do we use Western notation to communicate with each other? And the answer is yes, 100%, because we're all trained musicians that went through music school. And so we have that as our means of communicating with each other. Sheet music is actually, just, we found it still is the most efficient. It's not a perfect system at all, but if we're just trying to communicate, the same way that language is kind of a terrible way of communicating sometimes. I will say this is actually kind of important. When we work in situations with low rehearsal, like with a big band, sometimes we have like extra horn players come. You better believe that I'm going to write out everything as clearly and as simply as possible using time signatures, using probably the simplified version of like 516, whatever the base couplet is, usually is how I approach it. But just the reading aspect, it's so much easier to just like read the simplest form of that like 516, 716. In all other circumstances that aren't like low rehearsal environments, it's just sending recordings to people. Also, by the end of the day, once you have that rhythmic vocabulary, you can hear the recording, hear like, oh, it's fives or whatever, and then learn it by ear. And then you're much more concerned about things like pulse and on and off beats, and you're not as concerned about like how to notate it by that point.
So where do we go from here? Yeah, so I guess you guys just saw that. Yeah, the animation with the Sungazer Plus with the big band.
Well, there are some ideas out there about ways to augment time signatures as notation.
I invented a new terminology, a new sort of way of writing out.
5 beats divided into 4. Divided into 5? Wait, what? 5 beats divided into 4 divided into 5? Do you mean like vertically or? Okay, don't kill yourself, Arachnus. Damn.
Time signatures where you normally have like 4/4, and I figured there was a number missing at the top, which is like the number of beats within each beat. Oh. So you can have 4/4, but you can have like 5/4/4, where it's like.
I love Jacob. In My Room, his debut album, is my favorite album of all time. But that idea, I don't know about that one. If you're going to have a number on top and you're going to have a triple time signature like that, I think obviously that should be about hypermeter and not subdivision. Also, if you're saying we're in 4/4 but we're subdividing in quintuplets and you're actually making a notation change to do that, like, what do you even mean that there are 4 quarter notes? Are you going to still notate the quintuplets? Or is this gonna be notated like the way that 2016 might be notated? Like, what's going on there? I don't know. He never specifies, and I've never seen anybody actually use this thing, so I don't know about that one. There's also the idea of like nesting time signatures. Braden Holmes talks about this in a video that he made called something like "Why I Hate Time Signatures."
Call this 2, 3, 5, 516, and
yeah, I think one of the early ideas for kind of how this video was going to be framed was going to be like the problem with time signatures or something like that. I think in the end, actually, as I investigated the idea further, I ended up coming kind of back around to being like, yeah, time signatures are fine, actually. And that's what I say in this video, right? But, early on, it was going to kind of be more focused on just like the idea that like big time signatures kind of fail you. I was then like, eventually I did find this video by Braden Holmes, and I was like, oh, this has kind of already been done, hasn't it? In a sense. I mean, this video from him doesn't have like a ton of views, but and I definitely would have still, made that video anyway, because I would have had slightly different things to say. But yeah, I kind of actually disagree with him, I guess, on this in the end. I think time signatures are fine. I think it's okay that they're not fully describing the meter in complex cases. They can just be a summary, and that's fine, because honestly, the vocabulary that you actually are going to want to learn in 1316, even though there are a bunch of different ways to divide up 1316, even if you do learn vocabulary in all of those different ways, it's still not going to add up to the amount of vocabulary you would learn in 4/4, because there's so much more music in 4/4. And so it's actually fine that 1316 has a bunch of different ways to divide it up. And I think that, there is a coherent concept of 1316 that ties those different groupings all together. Whether it's a 6 + 7, or is it a 5 + 5 + 3, or is it a something else? I don't know. But yeah. So I actually am okay with time signatures. But yeah, it was funny to find this video, because I found this video a while ago, like earlier on in the process.
Now we're starting to see a problem. We're starting to notice this kind of fractal-like...
But he suggests this idea of like nested, like potentially infinitely nested time signatures, which is like, yeah, that's interesting. Like that would be a way that you could get around it, I guess. The problem, right, is that it's still limited because your time signature has to be like perfectly symmetric all the way down. Like your metric tree has to be uniform, or yeah, it has to be symmetric. Your metric tree has to be symmetric for this to work, because you have to have just like each layer describable with one number. But if you have a metric tree where you have like at the bottom you have a 6 + 6 + 7, like in Threshold for instance, you can't just do a nested time signature, because it would have to be you can't just say like, oh well, it's 4 3 4 6, it's like 4 3 6 16 or something. Like you can't just say that, because it's actually 6 16 6 16 7 16. And so you'd have to just write, I guess, 4 6 + 6 + 7 16, I guess, is how you would do that in this case, because it would be like an additive time signature. And at that point, it's like, man, what are we doing? And it's not like Braden is proposing this and saying like, this is how we should do it. Like he's saying right here that like, yeah, this is getting ridiculous, right? So I agree with him on that.
Nature of time that really is undefinable. That's why I find...
Or is it with a metric tree? Hey, you can kind of do it. Although, there are still like wonky, actually irrational rhythms, or, like rhythms where like the point is not that there's like a certain number of divisions and you're playing a certain number of them. Like that is out there, but I did not touch that at all. I didn't touch swing at all. Swing is like, oh man. And actually, speaking of swing, there's also like, there's this guy called Malcolm Braff. Oh my goodness. Let me see if I can find that stuff. So I ended up being like, no, I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess I don't have a link here. Let me find this thing. Website where he talks. Yeah, here it is. General theory of rhythm. The greatest revolution in musicology since Pythagoras. Justin Bieber. That's what this site says. The greatest revolution in musicology since Pythagoras. Justin Bieber. Okay, but this is not it though. It's general theory of swing that I'm looking for. Bro, where is it? A general theory of swing. Void form is gone, so he can't help me here. Okay, well, it looks like we have... Oh, okay. So he has so he has general theory of rhythm, and then he has specifically general theory of swing, which looks like this. And he talks about like meter as a harmonic system, and I found that really interesting. And in my script, I was going to talk about that and like make timbral analogs of different meters. So like, if you think about like, for instance, like, I don't know, 6/8 would be like a fifth, right? Because you have, or sorry, I guess 6/8 would be what would that be? A 12th? Yeah. 6/8 would kind of be like a 12th, I guess. But if you have swing, then you kind of have like two halves that are not the same size of the beat, and you could look at those two lengths and treat them as frequencies. And you can think about the meter and the hypermeter and the subdivision in a metric field as like frequencies. Well, I mean, you don't have to think of them as frequencies; they are frequencies. They're not audible frequencies in the pitch sense, but they are frequencies. Like they have a frequency within time. And so you can think about them with the harmonic series and like apply those same harmonic concepts. And that's really cool stuff, but yeah, didn't make it into the video.
Time signatures vague.
Maybe I'll do it someday.
I think that applying the log-base2 rule more consistently, more broadly, is a good idea. I mean, I'm proposing the idea, I'm putting it out there. Feel free to critique it, make response videos, whatever. But I'm gonna stand by it, at least for now. I think it's a good idea. I think it describes the
waiting
difference
for the
between
response
something like
videos,
15.8
waiting
and
for the
15.16.
log-base2 rule debunked. 553 gang. 553 is good. We like 553. Although, lately I've been playing a lot more 454. I'm gonna be real. 4-5. There's a particular drum pattern in 454 that I've been addicted to recently, and yeah, it just feels so good. It's like, well, the particular drum pattern is kind of ambiguous between 454 and 445, which is kind of what makes it cool. And because actually the kick snare pattern would suggest 445, but it really feels more like 454 because of the hi-hat pattern. Anyway, it's fun. I'll see. Yeah, what's up, Israel Strom? Yeah. What's up, IJ? Graph Giraffe, hello. Juan Cracks, hello. Zeno Tesla, hello. Diego, hello. Oh, right, you said that, and I asked vertically, and you said yes, vertically. Okay. Right. I am still streaming. We're probably going to be done soon because we're almost done with the video, but I will talk about a few more things. Matt Garcia talking about something like that too. I'm sure he did, yeah. This also means we can have inharmonic swing that doesn't follow the harmonic series. Yeah, kind of. But if your swing can be represented with like a rational ratio, then it is at least the harmonic series of something. But it may be that the fundamental of that harmonic series is like ridiculously low frequency, which yeah, at that point maybe makes that go away conceptually. Lock any drummer to a grid. Only a tiny fraction of humans would ever notice it happens unless you told them. Wait, what? I reconsidered the framing of the video. Oh my god, yeah. Well, that happens a lot, believe it or not. Like, it's kind of interesting how like the entire point of the video will change, even though there's like some core concepts. Like, I think I always had the idea of like the log-base2 rule in mind, and the like layers of abstraction and how that makes time signatures confusing. But yeah, like initially I was gonna kind of like be more like anti-time signature, I guess. So yeah, I mean, that happens a lot. And yeah, but yeah, these North Stars were really like, I didn't actually write in these North Stars until pretty late in the process, actually, because it takes a while. You have to like, one of the things is that when you want to make a video about something and you're going to do research for it, like you have to be open to the research changing your mind about stuff. And you have to be open to changing the direction of the video potentially. Yeah, as I thought more about things and as I researched more about things, I kind of went more into the direction of, yeah, it's actually fine that time signatures don't fully describe the meter. They don't have to. They're still a useful like middleman between every little detail in the metric tree and like just saying nothing about it, right? But yeah.
Pretty nicely in a way that we can use to...
Yeah. So one of the things, I didn't call this out in the video, I considered it, but there's a video that Adam Neely did where he does Christmas songs in 15/16, but one of the feels that he does is 5/3s, is like a 5/4 in triplets. And I thought about clipping that for the section of this video where I'm like, yeah, so 5/3s actually has to be 15/8. But that's what I mean, I guess, when I'm talking about like applying the log-base2 rule more consistently, is like, let's not call that 15/16 actually. Let's call that 15/8, right? And yeah, that's what I would mean.
Talk about stuff. But you know, at the end of the day, when things are complex, we just need to communicate more. I do hope that this video has given you something to think about. Maybe you understand time signatures more deeply now, and maybe you understand why time signatures are confusing.
Plus a meter here.
All sorts of
Plus a
different
meter
reasons.
here.
A lot of people helped me out for this video in various different ways, so thank you to everybody listed here. And thank you to everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed.
My voice is really quiet in this
If
part.
you want to see
Not sure
whether
why.
I can actually back my shit up and whether I'm any good at music, well, I did just release an album recently, and I'm going to be playing it live.
Yeah, I did
on
release an album a few months ago. So I showed you all Fizz, but you know what else exists? And it's on Spotify. I'm using MusicBee because I'm no longer using streaming services primarily. But you know what else exists? This also exists. Chamber music. It's good. It has music that you heard in the video. It has the Does She Know breakdown. It has this.
Does she know it yet? Will she know it soon?
I mean,
does she see the truth? Does she see through you? Or haven't she a clue?
what's not to love? All right.
7/8 Day. Oh yes, we're playing the album live on 7/8 Day.
I was so excited. I got an email or a text from a band that I play with pretty often, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to open for us on July 8th?" And I was like, "July 8th? Wait, July 8th? Hell yeah!"
On July.
It's funny actually though, because there's not really much 7/8 in my album, if any. Like you could maybe feel some of Does She Know in 7/8, but there really isn't any 7/8 on the album, and so I'll have to figure out something for that. But I think I can figure something out. I'm pretty well versed in 7/8, even though there wasn't any on the album. There will definitely be some 7/8 on my next project.
July 8th at the Sunset Tavern in Seattle. So if you're around Seattle, show up. Thanks so much for watching, and
any of you gonna be around Seattle?
stay up.
And yes, indeed, this will not be the end.
It's not really orange juice.
It's not really orange juice. Here, I have it right here.
It's just water.
Look at this. Look at this guy. This is one of the few things I've ever bought as like an impulse buy, because I was like, oh, that's like a little like cool thing. I usually don't buy things like that, but this was just too much. I was like, this, and I knew that I would use it as a video prop eventually, so I did. I bought this like 2 years ago, and I finally used it in a video, so it was worth it. Nobody commented about it, so maybe it wasn't worth it, but it was worth it to me. Anyway, yes, beautiful. So yeah, this is definitely not the end. So I have, let's see, actually, can I show this? So here, I have other time signature video ideas, and it's like now that I've made the big one, I might be able to make lots of other ones. So yeah, I'm definitely going to make a follow-up about metric trees, because I'm going to make meter into an app, right? I'm going to give this a UI, or meter. I'm going to call it meter because it's metric tree, and metric has the meh sound, so it should be meter. Anyway, I'm going to make this. I'm going to put that out eventually, and there will be a video along with that, and I'll hopefully explain metric trees a little bit better than I did in this video. But yeah, let's see. Anything else here? Oh yeah, I guess maybe I want to cover this. I think I didn't. I mean, I kind of did this. Like, you can connect the dots in the video, but yeah, everybody in this stream, go to the video, go to the main video, okay, and comment like, "Wow, what a cool mug," or comment like, "What a dumb mug," or comment, "What a octuple mug," you know, just like comment something about the mug, and then I'll finally be happy. So yeah, this will happen. And who knows what else might happen. Yeah, I was thinking about maybe going through an example with those abstraction layers. I don't know if there's any great example that like gets all of the layers together. Like I don't know if there's a great example of a song where like does it have a time signature is an interesting question, and what exactly is the meter is an interesting question, and what is the time signature given one of those metric trees. I don't think there's any piece of music that will be interesting in all of those ways. But all of those questions are still possible, which is what like comes together in total to make time signatures confusing. Certainly there are songs though, like Norwegian Wood is a great example where it's like you might feel it as 3 beats, you might feel it as 6 beats, you might feel it as 4 beats, you might feel it as 2 beats. You could feel it in any of those ways. And you could feel it as 3 or 6 fast beats. You could feel it as 2 or 4 slow beats. And any of those are potentially valid. And then, if you are feeling like, 2 beats that are subdivided in 3, then you should probably call it 6/8. But then there are examples of songs that feel like that are written in 6/4 in the classical world. So that's how like all of those layers kind of add together. Usually one piece of music is probably only going to be ambiguous at one of those conceptual layers. But I guess I also wanted to maybe talk about like the concepts versus the implementation. So this is kind of like what I was going to talk about in the like great abstraction space of music section that I ended up not really going for. And that is like the idea of like concepts versus their implementations, and how the abstraction hierarchy goes opposite depending on whether you're looking at the concept or the implementation of the concept. So what I mean by that is like a specific piece of music is less abstract than a specific metric tree, right? Like a metric tree, there are lots of different pieces of music that could be one metric, that would all have like the same metric tree. But music is a higher level, more abstract idea than meter. So like the details of the meter are the like specific implementation of meter, or like maybe not even implementation, because that kind of implies that you're going all the way down. But like the specific meter is more abstract than the specific music, but music is more abstract than meter, right? And same thing with meter and time signature. Meter is more abstract than time signature, but a specific time signature is more abstract than a specific meter. You see what I mean? It's kind of interesting to investigate in that way. And that's why I was going to kind of talk about this great abstraction space and like ontology and stuff, but in the end I was like, that's too much. That's too much for this video, I think. The other big thing that I left out of this video, a whole section basically here, was this idea of rhythmic completeness, which is basically just me going through a mathematical proof of the idea that any rhythm can be represented in any time signature. And basically what you can do is you can like take any sequence of numbers, translate them into binary point representations, like decimal numbers, but not decimal, but like binary, right? Binary numbers with a point. And then you can actually translate the binary number very directly into music notation because it's a dyadic system. And so, you can kind of just prove that way pretty easily that yes, indeed, in any time signature, at any tempo, any possible sequence of rational numbers can be represented. And then, you can have rests versus notes. Irrational numbers can't be represented precisely unless you do, well, no, you can't really do an irrational number in a tuplet because the meaning of a tuplet still says like there are this many in this space, but then you still have to like notate that. So within the tuplet you wouldn't be able to notate the irrational number. But the thing is, you don't need that because you can approximate any real number to an arbitrary degree of precision with some rational number, and therefore you can, to an arbitrary degree of precision, notate any rhythm in Western notation. I didn't end up including that in the video, and I think that was definitely the right choice, right call. So bunch of stuff that I left out, but yeah, we'll see what else we can do. Yeah, and that would be this video, I guess. If I wanted to go more into that, I'd be like, yeah, everything's in 4/4 if you count like a nerd, because if you take something that is definitely not in 4/4, but you try to write it in 4/4 or count it in 4/4, that's actually going to be way harder than counting it like it is. And that's arguably way nerdier. So yeah, just flipping the meme on its head there a little bit. Maybe that'll happen. Cool. What else we got? What do you mean most music is not 4/4? Well, you'll have to find out when I make that video. No, I mean, that video, if it exists at some point, it'll be just kind of asking the question, like, why do we like counting to 4 so much? I don't know if you were here earlier in the stream where I was talking about this, but I assume that most of the people watching now are probably different than who were watching when I said this earlier, so I'll say it again. There's an interesting experiment you can do with yourself. Try counting to 2 at a moderate tempo over and over again for a couple of minutes. Then give yourself a rest, and then try counting to 4 over and over again for the same amount of time. And I think what you'll find is that counting to 4 feels viscerally much better and much nicer, and counting to 2 over and over again for several minutes kind of is disorienting in a way. Basically what that video would be about is like, there's all these beat patterns, there's all these patterns in our music that are actually symmetric across the bar line that are really 2-beat loops. So why do we keep calling them 4? And the answer is probably something like a combination of that, and also the fact that having slightly bigger measures allows you to chunk a piece of music more effectively, so you have less measures to deal with, but each measure individually still has like not that many beats in it. So it just mentally is easier to have chunks that are of more equal size to one another than to have like very small things and have a ton of them. Like, it's easier to deal with a few medium-sized things than a bunch of small things. You know what I mean? And so like that's just why 4/4 is better than 2/4 for a lot of stuff. There is also the classical explanation that like 4/4 is strong, weak, medium, weak, or strong, weak, 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 weak. All right, that was too many, but strong, weak, weak, weak. But that just doesn't really fly for like a lot of modern music. Like swing doesn't have a weak 3. Rock doesn't have a weak 3. there's something to be said there that like harmonic motion and like crash cymbals and stuff will highlight those bars. But if you're talking about that usually doesn't happen every measure, does it? Right? It's very, very common for that to happen only every 2 or 4 measures. And so in that case, are you saying like, actually it's in 16? Well, no, you're still going to call it 4. And, just because the chords are changing every 8 beats doesn't mean we're in 8/4. So why is it that we always go back to 4? And I think it's because 4 is the sweet spot for chunking music in our minds effectively. So now I don't have to make that video. I can just clip this stream, right? But yeah. Yes, I could make a short from it, or I could make a real video. I could make a 5-minute video as well. I haven't in a while, but I could do that. I definitely, like, most of these other ideas, these are not going to be hour-long videos. Definitely none of these are going to be hour-long videos. I mean, unless I go down a rabbit hole and it goes crazy, but I don't know. Yeah, a lot of music probably is actually more so grouped in 8. I feel like, like 8 bars, for instance. Here's an idea. See if you can like try to notice this when you listen to music or make music, and see if I'm right about this. I do think that 8 bars. So if you accept that a certain length of time is like 1 measure, right, and you are feeling that as the metric cycle, I feel like basically a hypermeter of 8 is the biggest. It's the I guess it's the smallest number of measures where if you play an odd number of that group, it will not actually feel odd at all. So for instance, if you have 4-bar groups and you only play 3 4-bar groups, there is some sense of like, oh, this is like a little bit different than I expected. Like in a 12-bar blues, like you kind of come back to the top a little bit early. It feels like that at a very large scale. Like it kind of feels like you're coming back a little bit early, because it kind of feels like, oh, we did three groups instead of 4. But once you get to 8 bars, then that's the tipping point, I think, where if you play 3 groups of 8 bars, it will not feel like you're coming back early on anything because the time scale has escaped that level. Now, of course, it depends on where you're actually feeling the metric cycle. So I should say maybe not measures, but like the like kind of primary grouping of the pulse. Whatever the size of the primary grouping of the pulse is, 8 of those is this like size that I'm talking about, where it's kind of this like critical mass at which point it can no longer feel odd to have an odd number of those things. Like, you know, if you have like 5 8-bar sections in your piece, nobody's ever going to think about that being like, oh, it's like in 5, like in some sense. Whereas there is like some trace of a sense in which a 12-bar blues is like in a hypermeter of 3. You know what I mean? John Lamberton has a video called Pythagorean Juke about tempo octaves, which I think you would love and can give you some new ideas. Yeah, well, I can imagine what the idea is from the name, tempo octaves. Yeah, I'll check that out. John Lamberton. Oh my, stop. It's giving me a menu. All right. Pythagorean Juke. Cool. I have not heard of this. Woodshed number 10, is that the idea? Looks like it. Looks like that's what you must mean. Okay, cool. Nice. Sweet. Well, I think that's probably it. Actually, this ended up going a little bit faster than I expected initially because we were going really slow at the beginning. Well, also like we missed like 30 minutes with the technical difficulties there. But yeah, cool. Well, if anybody has any other questions, go ahead and shoot them. But otherwise, I'm probably going to just going to wrap things up. I'll just play this for now.
Does she know it yet? Will she know it soon?
Right, maybe I should play this. This one's the real odd one. 2216, I would say. And this one's also polyrhythm heavy. Like there's a lot of polyrhythms on it as well. So it's like very odd meter and also polyrhythms on top of the odd meter. Definitely the most rhythmically intense track on the album. Wonder if we can get wonder if I can sync up the metric tree. I think I have... Oh, I don't. Shoot, I didn't save it. Let me see. So this one is... Okay, so it's 4 beats. Each one of those beats is a 7 and a 4. Too big. Oh, wait. Oh, I see. Oh, wait, what? Hang on. Oh, I see. Right, this is wrong. This is what it is. Ah, well, it slowed down. Oh, it's at the wrong tempo though. I don't even know what tempo this is actually at, to be honest. Because this was for Sungazer Plus. Yeah, I'm still live, although we're probably wrapping up soon. I don't know. I mean, like, if people have any questions about I don't know, time signatures, or the video, or where you can buy my music, andychamberlain.bandcamp.com, by the way. Where is it? Oh, I closed it. Okay. But yeah. Where you can check out Polyshaper or Realizer 2. Realizer 2 was so good. Honestly, like, Realizer 2 is, like, cooler than Polyshaper conceptually, in my opinion. But Polyshaper does, like, make the cooler product. What the hell is this? Oh. God damn it. Okay. Can I copy link? Oh, well, now it works. Okay, so if you want more details, see the last 2 videos in this series, but here's a brief recap. Imagine taking a song and stringing... Ask a metaphysical question for a 24-hour stream. Okay. Goodbye, Xeno Tesla. Ask a metaphysical question for a 24-hour stream. Perhaps one could do such a thing. It along a path, but in 2 dimensions like this. Now, how are we supposed to? What if there were 2 dimensions of time? Oh, apparently I like putting triple question marks in the middle of the video. Listen to this. Well, we need to take the shadow of each one of these segments. Oh, you know what we actually haven't done? Okay, actually, just kidding. The stream is going to continue for a little bit. We haven't gone through comments. Okay, yeah, they're talking about... Wait, no. This isn't the Vsauce thing, right? Or is it? Maybe it is the Vsauce thing. Oh, it is the Vsauce thing, yes. Okay. Somebody else said that too. Great video, time signatures. Right, I literally said in my story yesterday, I was like, there were some dissenting comments. So let me find... Yeah, multiple people saying they were blue-balled by the Vsauce music. Equal spans... What? No context? Okay. It's over for time signatures. Yeah, well, that was the original idea for the video, but that's not really this video actually. Oh my god. St. Augustine wrote a book about music, Socrations or Socration. Usually you would say Socratic, right? Am I wrong about that? I'm pretty sure, like, in college, or not in college, in high school, I remember, like, doing Socratic seminars. Socratic, as in of Socrates. Anyway, so I'm assuming they just mean Socratic. Socratic dialogue written in Latin using the pedagogy of the Latin language to teach things like meter, explaining this same thing before the existence of time signatures or even a reasonable notation system. The whole thing is lost in translation. Well, that's very interesting, and maybe I'll look into that for the deep dive on history. But okay, no, I want to... Oh, 3738. Immediately thought of Message by Lewis Cole. What's at 3738? The slow 6/8. Here's a groove. What time signature do you think this is in? I would call this 6/8. That's Message, right? Hang on. Or is I could be wrong about that. Oh yeah. This is it, right? So this is swung 6/8, right? So this is actually that, like, triplets inside triplets. Yeah. That is the song I was singing. And I think that's funny. Yeah. Well, good recognition of groove there. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, this person's talking about how they were fine with time signatures all forever because they were just, writing them and using notation and yeah. I mean, that's legit. Like in notation, they're very, very well defined. So there's not too much of an issue, but music is the creative organization of time. Sure. One weakness of the log2 system is that they don't say anything about when you could use 2.2 and 3.2. Well, it's almost as if I literally call that out exactly in my video and say that is a flaw. Yeah, maybe they didn't get to that part, or maybe they're just, well, okay, what else did they say? Longer note values look broader, so they're played more broadly, and the beats are more equal. Yeah, okay. The beats being more equal, that's kind of interesting because, yeah, in a lot of classical music, you do push and pull the time. Even when it's not rubato, you still push and pull the time a lot in classical music, especially if you're playing a solo piece, right? Solo concerto or something. So that's true. And that might be something that is a reason to use cut time, is to suggest that it's more consistent. But in terms of playing more broadly, I don't know about that, because usually people say that cut time is a fast 2 feel, and playing them more broadly sounds like they would be slower, right? Conductors can subdivide into strange ways. Yeah, and there's plenty of examples. So, this is stuff you should look at Andrew Meredith's videos for. Here, let me freaking make this thing public real quick. Wait, how do I make a playlist public? Is there something up here? No. Here we go. Okay. So I'm just gonna, put this in the chat. Why not? But check out Andrew Meredith's videos that are on here. They will talk lots about he talks lots about this when when conductors will conduct differently. Like for instance, there's a lot of conducting 3/4 in 1. That happens a lot. The fact that this video is descriptive versus prescriptive notation. Okay, I'm familiar with the concepts of descriptive and prescriptive, but maybe that's something specific. Yes, so swing. Yeah, this person brings up swing. Swing is something I did not touch, and that was very intentional. At some point during the ideation process, I was thinking about talking about swing, but yeah, I was like, I can't deal with that in this video. That's too much. Where am I? What? One of my favorites in 11.7? One guy explained it as 2 groups of 4 and a group of 3. So 2 groups of 4 and a group of 3 is 11. Where's the 7 coming from? Again, non-dyadic time signatures are not meaningful on their own. So, yeah. It's child's play if you don't treat it as some esoteric subject. Well, that's good, because I didn't treat it as some esoteric subject in this sense. I covered that very early on in the video, and I was like, yeah, this is fine. Let's see. Just a matter of fractions. See, lots of people would vehemently disagree with you there. There's so many comments on r/music theory about, people misunderstanding the bottom number, or not understanding the bottom number, and people are like, time signatures are not fractions. And also, especially with like people asking 3/4 versus 6/8, what's the difference? And people are like, time signatures are not fractions. People are so adamant about that. And I'm like, yeah, they actually are in part, at least. Like they definitely mean something as a fraction. They tell you the value of a measure, but there's also other stuff to them, obviously, besides that. Stravinsky. This guy is just, wistfully thinking about Stravinsky, and that's fair. That's fair. I downloaded Stravinsky Rite of Spring, actually, the PDF for it, into my like documents. I didn't end up using it in the video, but I looked through it because I've never played it, but I know that it's this like very famous like extremely mixed meter piece, and so it's like looked at the score a little bit, and I was like, yep, look at all those meters, look at all those time signatures. Yeah, so this there are like at least 4 or 5 people who commented who are like, I'm a teacher and I teach them with the word count, and I'm like, hell yeah, that's what we like to see. Oh, you think maybe they meant a 7/11 polyrhythm? Regular temperament theory, one giant obscure topic that honestly I could see as a way to get into abstract algebra. Abstract algebra, oh boy. I am not familiar with regular temperament theory. No, I'm not. Remember that thread some years ago? 7/11? Do you mean... No? Are you talking about like a Reddit post? Because I'm not actually on r/music theory that often. And then let's see. What else do we got here? 15/16 is 4/4 with a missing 16th. I mean, it could be. Could be 4/4/4/3 is possible, yeah. Huh, interesting. Yeah, so this is interesting that this guy teaches and he approaches feel/groove first with time signatures. That is curious because, that's not the way in which time signatures are most well defined. But it is true that time signatures do mean that stuff to a lot of people, so yeah. Arrange songs in time signatures. Yeah, arranging like songs that are in 4/4 with nice simple melodies into odd time signatures, especially 7/8. It's always so easy to do 7/8 because it's just there's always like somewhere to take out an 8th note. People confuse the myth of sight reading notation and the fact that you can use it to communicate. Yeah. Yep. Oh wait, is this the same guy? Or no? Okay. It's always about the pulse and how to subdivide it. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe it's always about that, I guess. How many beats are in a whole note? That's an interesting way of phrasing it. I've actually never heard it phrased exactly like that. I mean, that is just saying like it's the, inverse of the value of the note. But yeah, how many beats are in a whole note? That's funny. That's definitely, that's true if we're talking about the top number being beats. Then yes, the top number does tell you how many things there are in each thing. We'll go into a whole note the bottom number of times. Okay, where... Yeah, I assume this person is talking about that like 1601 example. Yeah, I know about that, but I know about the C and the F clefs and all that. But the weird thing is that there were 2 on one staff, which I think is because it was like a split part. So I guess the bottom one was supposed to sing. Yeah, anyway, with the bottom clef presumably. Although, well, unless this person is just talking about the whole thing, I'm not sure. What do you do with double dotted notes with your description of a dotted note? Ah, yes, in base 3. That's the whole thing. I'm going to explore that in another video, and we're going to talk about base 3 some more. So, yeah, there's actually way more to it than just... It will... I'm not going to spoil, actually. There's a lot to that. Rebarred some of his pieces for copyright reasons. Oh, that's funny. I've never heard about this. And they sound exactly the same. Well, yeah, because you just read the notes. You just read the notes, and like the accents are where the accents are. Let's see. Oh, come on. Where are the hate comments? I know there's some. And then somebody is just posting the gospel. Yeah, okay. Nothing to do with the video at all. They're just like, hey, I think y'all need to hear about Jesus. Oh no. What have I done? Where's the hate comments? I know that there's some. Here we go. Insufferably bad video, also someone using different words to describe the things that you use. Does not mean they're telling lies. Which I suppose is strictly speaking true. But I think I clarified things well enough when I talked about the lies, right? And but the thing is, like, this happens, right? Like, you get told that the top number is the number of beats. If you get told that, then you will later be told, well, not really, because you get to 6/8. And that's like, you know, it's not like some egregious, like, crime against humanity, but it is a kind of mild lie. Tapping polyrhythm in a 7/11. Yeah. Regular temperament theory uses linear algebra, not abstract algebra. But, I mean, he said that it would be a way to get into abstract algebra, and linear algebra is basically like the first kind of dip your toes into the water of abstract algebra a little bit. Because linear algebra is an algebra, and it's like the first algebra it's like the second algebra that you usually learn, right? And so the whole idea of abstract algebra is to be like, okay, so there's actually this whole like world of algebras. Linear algebra is a specific one of those that you learn second usually. Usually you first learn like regular algebra. I'm sure there's a technical term for it, with, you know, our regular numbers. And then you learn linear algebra, and then you're like, yeah, so actually there's like a you know, a bunch of these. So I can see how, like, if it is linear algebra stuff, then I would not be surprised that it's a way to get into abstract algebra. After I took linear algebra in college, I really kind of was interested in taking abstract algebra. I didn't, because it just didn't make sense logistically, but maybe someday I'll go back to a community college class on it or something. Well, Adam Neely issued a 7/11 polyrhythm challenge a few years ago. That did happen. I did not participate, unfortunately. I still have never actually learned 7/11. There is a 7/11 polyrhythm in Natalie Has Never Tasted Anything Other Than Mustard. Well, okay, it's more like a 7 against 22, I guess. But there's a part where like the splash or China or crash symbol thingy is like doing 7 even divisions over the bar, and the bar is like 22/16 or 11/8. So, and it was a complete accident. I didn't actually intend to do like 7/11 because of the meme. I just adjusted the notes until they sounded cool, and then I counted them up, and I was like, oh, there's 7. Yeah, I can put a hate comment if you want. Yeah, go ahead, put a hate comment. I feed off of them, right? Like, if you don't have any hate comments, then it's like you probably haven't said anything interesting. Maybe. And this person says that does she know really grab their ears, which touches my heart. Generative theory of tonal music, Chomskyan approach to this theme. That sounds like an interesting read. You've been lied to. Screw that. Yeah, screw being lied to. don't talk about beats. I'm sure this person is disagreeing with me, but I'm just gonna pretend that they're agreeing with me. Okay, here we go. Another one. Lame semantics are not revelations nor music theory. See, this guy doesn't know that all of music theory is lame semantics. Okay, I just happen to really like lame semantics. Where was it? Yes, this is semantics. Yes, this is music theory. Music theory is names for things, so yeah. I do not know what this person means. Are all seconds the same length? My metronome doesn't think so. What do you guys think that means? What does this person mean by that? Like, maybe it's like a ESL thing. Maybe this person's translating this comment. I just have no idea what this person means by that comment. Only listen to noise music for a month. A lot of discussion of noise music is from people who don't listen to it, judging without understanding the appeal, and I would like some variety. Well, are there not like noise music aficionados? Like, are there not like, you know, people who are just like regular reviewers of noise music albums or something? Do those not exist? I'm not really that interested in noise music to listen to. Going to noise music shows, that is something I'm interested in. I went to a noise music show in college one time, and it was actually pretty cool. It had very specific vibes, and it was like, yeah, it was cool. It was a very unique experience, and I would be down for that again. But the like listening to it in my headphones, like sitting on my chair in my room, I don't know about that. For the most part, I mean, yeah, every music genre has a tradition, it has vocabulary, it has stuff that you'll pick up on as you listen to it more. So I'm sure if I listened to noise music for a month, I would start to appreciate a lot of stuff. Teacher came drunk to class, and said that time signatures are an attempt of humanity to manipulate time to our will. Maybe. I would say maybe music is an attempt to manipulate time to our will. Meter, certainly. But I don't know about time signatures being that. White Centipede Noise Podcast. Okay. I can't guarantee that I will check that out, but thanks for the recommendation anyway. Yeah. Okay, I don't know. Those were like the only like kind of viscerally antagonistic comments. But oh yeah, I need to double check, but I'm pretty sure that the minim, like in the early music sources mensural notation video, he talks about the minim, and he says that the minim was never intended to be the shortest possible note, but it was the shortest note that could get a syllable, that could get a full syllable of the text. That was the idea. So it's like the minimum note value for a syllable. And that was why it was called minim, not because it was like the shortest note possible, but it definitely was the shortest note at some point, because like in Franco of Cologne's treatise, he doesn't even talk about minims. Or maybe he talks about minims, but he definitely does not talk about anything shorter than a minim. So, yeah. Yeah, okay, this person also has a, I guess, this kind of like lame take that I like how people just keep inventing concepts over simple topics to completely confuse beginners in any field of study. So, and make everything boring. So, making everything boring is very subjective here. I don't think this is boring at all, obviously, but that's very subjective. The thing is, inventing concepts over simple topics is not what I'm doing. I'm at best, I'm inventing concepts over complex topics, but also like, yes, I guess the log-base-2 rule is a new concept, kind of, but I think it's also just kind of a description. I mean, descriptions of concepts are concepts, whatever, it's concepts all the way down, right? But the log-base-2 rule is not out of thin air. Like, I'm calling it the log-base-2 rule because there's some math to it now, but like, this is stuff that we already have been doing for the most part. Like, usually a 13/16 groove is going to be felt as like about 3 beats that are uneven. So, yeah. And it's definitely not boring to me, and definitely not boring to thousands of people who enjoy this video, but maybe it's boring to this person. That's okay. This person likes time signatures outside notation. Yay. Yeah, these are all things I haven't responded to. I guess this isn't like the full... Oh, there's this... Are you still in the chat? Wait. Redopal. I'm pretty sure the name... Oh, Ropal. You're Ropal in the chat. The log-based2 method killed my dog. Yeah, not sorry. The log... Anyway. This was great. A waste of time bitching session. Who cares? Thousands of people care. So. Oh! Yeah, hell yeah. Thank you, Diego. Yeah, I'm very curious, like, I don't know. I want to know what the backgrounds of each of these people are who thinks that this whole discussion is just a waste of time. I think the only way you think this is a waste of time to talk about this, well, I mean, maybe it's a waste of time to talk about this because you don't have to care about this. Nobody's saying you have to care about this, right? It's just music theory. But like when you talk about like you know, this is a waste of time, this is like a meaningless discussion, like I imagine that must be coming from somebody who's got a very like narrow perspective, which is fine. It's fine to have a narrow perspective. Maybe it's not so fine to be a dick about it in the comments, but like oh well. But like, you know, if you're like extremely just like I only play classical music, then it's like, yeah, sure, like who cares? You don't need this. But also I said that in the video, so I don't know. But yeah, honestly, fair enough on that. Okay. Yeah, cool. Okay, I think that's enough. I think that covered everything I wanted to cover, and got this right. Time signatures are a property of meter. Yep. And the log-based 2 rule is really I really should have probably framed it more so around the idea of taking a metric tree and computing the time signature. The fourth one literally looks like it does have that vibe for sure. Like the generic hate comment they put up in a dramatic shot in a movie. Yeah, that's interesting, Vix. Also, welcome to the stream. I don't think you've said anything yet. Welcome. Yeah, that's an interesting idea that people get angry when you try to create shortcuts for things they already formed as the same kind of truth. That's true. I mean, that is generally a pattern of human behavior, where it's like, oh, like I had to do it the hard way, so I'm mad that you have an easier way. Although, I mean, these people are like ostensibly claiming the opposite of that in a sense, right? Because they're like, this is so simple, you're overcomplicating it. But yeah, that's interesting. Perhaps. Oh, yes, Mr. Mugman. Time signatures are fake. Perhaps they are. I'm scared to look at what's at 2255 now. What's at 2255? Oh. It's the guy. It's the perfect doodle. No dot, so that's perfect tempus, imperfect prolatio, and also perfect doodling. Yes. No, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Do I heart this comment? I'm not sure. Who is this? They have a badge on them. Okay. How do you get the badge? I have 6,000 subscribers, but I don't have the music badge. How do you get that? Anyway. That's funny. I'm going to heart it. Yeah, man. Oh, yeah. Yep. Oh, Johnny. Oh, Johnny. Johnny is a friend. He is an extremely good piano player. He's just like, his technical piano chops are ridiculous. Anyway. Also his polyrhythm chops. Cool. Okay. Well, very, very epic. I think that's probably it for this stream. It was a good one. Almost 4 hours, probably more than 4 hours because of the first segment of the stream that got cut off and then made into a separate video and all that bullshit. But we're back. We're here. Let me. Time signatures are like a box of psyops. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Why not? All right. Cool. I think that will be good. Where do I leave us? Maybe we leave with the view of the entire project. Oh yeah, look at how many video clips there were. 675 on the first track, 186, 143. So many video clips, so many audio clips. I'm just gonna collapse everything here. And we'll end the stream with this in sight. Boom. Yep, and that's everything. All right, sweet. Thank you all so much for showing up. And that's it.